there we go. Hey guys, you might recognize, I got a little friend right here, right? Leonardo, him and his brothers just joined SMITE, might recognize him from that. Either way, I was talking to them and just trying to get a feel for things, and they told me they have a lot of fun, right? They like to spend their downtime. They do things like eating pizza, they like skateboarding, and when they play video games, they told me that they actually had to splurge a little bit and get themselves some comfortable chairs. You see us relaxing in them. They do too. The SMITE Maxonomic chairs, they just make you better at games all around. I've heard it from everybody. I have heard that there does need to be a gap if you are a rat. Your tail might not go through, but you know, for Master Splinter, I think that's a unique problem. I'm not sure a lot of people are going to be running into that one. So go ahead and go for needforseat.com and order yourself a SMITE Maxonomic chair using code SMITEMAX. And while you're at it, if you have a little bit of extra cash on the side, go ahead and get the TMNT Battle Pass. It's already out there. These guys have joined in. You can get them and their Radical skins that come through. You've got Loki, Mercury, Osiris, and I'm blanking on the fourth one. Hachiman's in there as well, Raven. It's a lot of skins that you come forward, and it's got everybody's favorite 4 turtles. I guess technically 8 because 2 skins. Their favorite rat, their favorite villain there for Shredder. And there's a Bebop and Rocksteady icon. That's more than you could ever want. But I'm going to go ahead and let him go continue fighting crime and doing his own thing. And I'm going to welcome in Inbound here to help me through this rest of the set, because we're going into what we were talking about is probably going to be the biggest one moving forward. I mean, this is a really, really weighted set. SSG and Radiance. Whoever wins this has to take on Ghost, which neither of them really have a good history with, realistically. And so there's a lot of weight going forward into the finals.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited for this set. I think Radiance looked really good yesterday, and SSG's looked good most of the year. So I think this will be probably the best set that we'll have this weekend.
And it's going to be, man, a lot of work, I think. SSG, we had kind of mentioned it with Snoopy, but maybe not the best history up against Ghost Gaming. Still, you need those points at minimum. Either way, you're still looking for that first seed at Worlds. Radiance come through, and they looked insanely good yesterday. But before we get to them, we have to look at the team that we haven't got a lot of eyes on, and that is going to be SSG so far this weekend. They're kind of coming in fresh. Do you think that helps you? Like, if you're coming into the semifinals, you have 3 games yesterday, you could watch what Radiance were doing. Do you spend all night kind of studying that footage, figuring it out, then you come into the set prepared, or are you more like relaxed about it? Like, you know what? We know we're good.
I think you want to give your opponent enough respect that you will look at all their games, look at their drafts, how they played the late game. I think you want to give them that respect and be able to just study them and just learn what you can get from these games, because they are very important games. They're the recent games that you've had from these teams. So there's just a lot of information you can grab from them.
And this is, I want to say, an interesting set, because SSG, while historically was able to take down a lot of the teams throughout Phase 2 and went on a very long undefeated streak. The only team at first that was regularly taking them down were Ghost Gaming, although a couple people have put their names on it. Cherio as well. A couple of quadra kills throughout the phase. The only pentakill in Season 7, I think, that we're going to watch right now that comes through. But the last time they met Inbound, it was a 2-0 for Radiance, of all things. And so there's some precedence here that Radiance are not a team that SSG can just scoff at. Yes, the history and the way this year has gone is good for them, but what kind of things do you think it is that Radiance could maybe tackle to help deal with SSG here? What are SSG's strongest strengths to really solidify this win for them?
I think SSG's strengths just come into their late game. They have one of the best late game team fightings. It's like right there with Sanguine. Getting the late game doesn't even guarantee you a win, even if you have a late game comp. And I think the biggest problem that SSG faces against Radiance is that Radiance also plays for late game and also has these unreal late game fights, and their players will play for the late game also. And I think that's where SSG kind of struggles with Radiance a little bit.
This is going to be interesting just because of that dynamic, right? And you had mentioned it. I think both of these teams have, I would argue, like a more European style of Smite that we used to see, where it's a little slower at the very beginning. It's more about the farm. Maybe you get some early ganks, but realistically, like you had highlighted, it is for those late game team fights. And when you switch over and look at late game team fights, specifically here for Radiance, my mind starts going to Aurora, to adapting, because those two, not only yesterday, but I think historically for this team all year, have really been the driving factors, and adapting yesterday on Circuit and Daji looked phenomenal.
Yeah, I think Aurora and adapting did a lot, but BMT was also huge in those late game team fights. He was positioning perfectly, he was impossible to go on, and he was getting off a ton of damage. And I think those three are like the biggest focal points in the late game for Radiance and why they just do so well in the late game.
Now, as the core 3v3 goes, and since you're a support, you can really highlight this. The jungler, we always talk about how kind of being a driving factor, but how well, do you work as a support with that? Like, where is the setup coming from? Are you really the one that, needs to go in and do it? Or are, in this case for Radiance, are you hoping that adapting is the guy to set you up? Because a lot of that was happening realistically between both of them yesterday. I even had a game with this Ares and the Daji where they were kind of burning beats for each other.
Yeah, I think it's really comp dependent mostly. I think in some spots, adapting will be the one engaging. He went the more tanky Surcat yesterday, so engaging for him is fine. And then Aurora also, depending on what he plays, he can also be the one engaging, or if he plays this Ares, he can also be the secondary engage and the one that's looking to do the damage and looking to confirm the kills. I think so it's really just all comp dependent.
Now, that's the interesting thing. The Ares coming through, it kind of felt like a surprise. Like, we don't see him a whole lot all year, and then all of a sudden, in the playoffs, he gets 2 games in a row from Radiance, and they find that 3-0. Do you think it's something that will work really well against SSG, or is that something that was maybe a unique identifier for yesterday?
I think they played around it really well yesterday, and PK didn't really have an answer for it, so I think if SSG is not prepared for it, I think the Ares can be a huge, huge pick for them. I think, but it's really all just dependent on how SSG prepared for it, how SSG is going to be ready for the Ares.
Well, they had 3 games to study for yesterday. And speaking of studying, the only person, at least for this one, that needed a lot of homework to try and repeat their success at the end of Phase 2, it would be Biggie, the coach here for Radiance. We got to talk to him a little bit earlier to see how he was feeling and the team as they go into this big set against SSG.
All right, we've got Biggie, coach for Radiance, joining us now. Biggie, congratulations on a big win over the Pittsburgh Knights yesterday, but you don't have a lot of time to rest on your laurels and feel good about it. You've got a very tough Space Station gaming team across from you now. Obviously, you were at the mercy of Ghost on where you were going to go and who you were going to face. Do you think this Space Station matchup is a little bit better for you than the potential Ghost matchup?
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think there's a huge advantage for us to see what Ghost does. I feel like the way they drafted through the split and then the way they drafted the last week against us when we played them was very different. So for me, I kind of not sure which way they want to go. Whereas SSG, I feel is we've been able to scrim them a lot as well. So I feel they're a little bit more predictable. So kind of advantageous that Renegades happen to pop off, and I think that tempted Ghost a lot. Otherwise, I think they would have chosen us if it was between us and Sanguine.
Well, you end up now up against a Space Station team, and the narrative that I think a lot of people have right now for Space Station is that they're really, really good against everybody not named Ghost, who they seem to have a little bit of just stylistic trouble with this season. What do you feel that same way? Do you think that Space Station might have a better matchup against a team that plays the way that your team does?
I think, yeah, I mean, for sure, because they don't like to pressure as much early. They like kind of a slower paced game. But I don't think SSG's in that good form. I think they were. I feel like SSG's really weird team. Their highs are really high, and then their lows, they kind of dip. And I think us and Ghost both kind of stomped them the second last week of the split, and then they had kind of like a troll game against the United. So I'm not sure that they're in the best of form. I wouldn't say, unless they've done a lot of kind of work leading up in scrims, I don't think they're kind of like world-beating SSG that we saw in the middle of the split. But they definitely have a better matchup against us, I think, kind of playstyle-wise, than a Ghost.
Well, they're going to have to fight you where it seems like you're at your best. Your team popped off Phase 1 playoffs. Now you look great 3-0ing PK yesterday, and you're setting yourselves up for a great position. If you win this, you're basically in top 2 guaranteed at the World Championships. Do you think that your players are just locked in at this time of year? Do you think that this really brings out the best of them, having the highest stakes?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think that was a hard thing for me, kind of coaching. I feel like previously when I was on Dig, my team was kind of always consistent. Like we had slumps for maybe a week or two, but we always brought it back. So for me, it was very weird coaching a team that slumps so hard, especially when you have so much talent. It's kind of like, okay, how are we playing this bad? But right now, I feel very like they're very switched on. The comms are really good. The discussions they have with each other, like really productive and really quick and productive in game, and we kind of know exactly what we want to play and what we want to play with kind of our combinations. So I feel like we are probably in the best form that we've been in all year.
Perfect timing for it. That's what the best players
Yeah.
do. Biggie, good luck today against Spacestation. Looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Well, it sounds like all of Radiance feel pretty confident coming into this one, although this one's always the shakiest inbound. When it comes down to it, SSG are such a difficult team to tackle. While listening to the interview, I was also looking at like their top picks and bans, and I just realized that, I mean, you got to ban Aphrodite. You have to deal with so much coming out of Dardes in the mid lane. But then also you'd like to ban the Erlang Shin away from Cherio. Also you'd like to ban maybe even the Amaterasu or some solos from Nika. Like, it just feels so difficult to play against SSG, and you've been in those shoes. I mean, when you're tackling the picks and bans for this team, where do you go first?
You just have to go where you think the biggest problem will be against you. They have 2 gods in each role that they can just absolutely stomp with, and all of those gods will become problems, but which ones will just be the biggest problem to you? Usually healing is a big one that people look at. Playing into healing is just a lot more difficult, because if you don't win the fight outright, you're just going to lose the war overall. So maybe take a hit at the Afro. Erlang's always a safe one, because Cherry plays that way better than he plays any other god. His Erlang is superb, and the Afro ban, Dardes on the Afro is just absolutely insane. That leaves open his Hera. And then Persephone. A bunch of the mid gods are just good too. So, yeah, I don't know where they're gonna go with the rest of it.
Man, nothing's fun when you say, well, they banned the Aphrodite, but that also leaves open this, and this, and he's really good with all of those. Like, it's never, I think, a good time to be up against SSG. It does feel like, and as you had highlighted, because the draft phase for them is so, I don't even want to say easy, but because they have so many gods that they can make work, you're not really trying to win in picks and bans. Like, you're trying to stifle their ability to win here and slow it down. And we had talked about this guy on Waiting Room. Cupid's been a really, really hot pick the last 2 days. Finally, someone's giving a little bit of respect over there to Rom. We haven't seen him. Can you think of many reasons why he's just been void so far?
Yeah, I don't know why. People have just been loving the Cupid, and they've been loving the Heim. Rama was like a top pick, like just heading into playoffs, and people just fell off on him. Yeah, it's just really weird not seeing him anymore. But I'm glad to see him first picked. He's just, like, he just wins lane for free. He's going to be a sick late game god. There's just no downside to Rama, while Heim and Cupid do have, like, a little bit of downside. So seeing the Rama picked up is just really nice.
You're always happy if WoWy locks that in. I'm sure SSG are happy to go ahead and lock that one in for vote. The Circuit, though, this was big yesterday for Radiance, and we had kind of talked about it. Depending on how you target your bans, trying to slow down adapting has been successful in the past, at least in that big slump Radiance had that kind of felt like where people were able to slow things down, adapting and Aurora. You get the Circuit Nike. Both of these were pretty prominent yesterday. I don't know. It feels like a really solid top 2 here for Radiance.
Yeah, I think Radiance just got what they wanted. Adapting was really clean on the Circuit, and I think he's kind of found his like niche of like comfort that he's like been lacking through like a little bit of the second phase. So I'm glad to see him find the Circuit, and he's found a lot of success on it so far. So the Nike also, no surprise, and going to be in the solo lane. She's going to clear wave, going to play for the late game, and they are just going to be trying to kill either the mage or they're going to kill the hunter. Circuit does very, very well with just killing a squishy, and Nike just helps with that. They're both going to be just diving, popping thorns, and then Circuit ulting.
Well, it's Ganesh locked in. Not a lot of people play this Ganesh, realistically. I mean, Raffer's been kind of the only one doing it consistently these last few weeks, even though it's been sprinkled in here and there by a couple of other supports. And we had done a Grandmaster's class on it where he had even mentioned that you're not playing him for the first even 10 levels, realistically. Like, you're playing him for those late-game fights. When you pick him up, or if you even hesitate to pick him up, like, do you want him with someone like Rom where he can find a lot of success because his hunter's really good? Or at least for you personally, do you just avoid him like the plague and get something you can have some more control on?
Personally, I don't really like him, but I understand why Raffer likes him. The peel is insane, and then he's just allowed to play either a defensive or aggressive strat with his ult. And it allows you to just kind of feel out how team fights are going, feel how the game is going, and you can just play with how it's going. And the Sun Wukong is really no surprise either. He's going to go to Nika. He loves that, and he loves the Alma, and he's going to play one of those 2 gods every single game if he's allowed. And then Cupid, another top hunter. It's weird seeing Cyclone prioritize a different hunter every time. Like, some games he's picking the Heim, some games he's picking the Cupid. And it feels like there's no real rhyme or reason. It's just, do you want this hunter? And he's saying yes or no.
How's he feeling today, right? Just shuffle the cards, draw one, see what happens. Well, Radiance are going to ban out the Cabrakan as well as the Hera. I was actually looking at it. I mean, Cabrakan's been picked up a few times and maybe something that Cherry runs more often than not there in the jungle. It also feels like maybe you're taking something away from Aurora. I'm interested to see what their strategy is. It's also interesting because, like, the Ares ban that was very prominent yesterday, Pachanga banned by SSG feels like one that would maybe hit them more than it would hit Radiance here. But it's the Kuzenbo locked in. And I don't know, for Radiance, like, at least throughout Phase 2, those 4 picks are incredibly solid as a team lineup.
Yeah, I really like Aurora on the Kuzenbo. I don't know if he's gotten that much prioritization in this the playoffs much, but he's just a really, really safe pick, and SSG now has flex potential between the Amma and the Wukong. One's going to go jungle. If I had to guess right now, I'd say Sun Wukong. But I think they're just going to leave open it to Cherry and Nika.
Yeah, at that point, I feel like, I don't know how the comms go, but it's whichever one Nika doesn't want Cherry picks. Like, I don't think he gets that much say in it, right? It has to be over which one Nika is feeling. They get the Morgan as well. A lot of interesting transformations throughout this game, but nothing that really stands out to me. Discordia locked in as well. I mean, just looking at these two comps, do you have one that you're kind of feeling a little bit more when it comes to the team fight stage, or is there some interesting plays that might just make it all hectic?
I actually love the SSG comp. I think they picked perfectly into what Radiance played yesterday, and Radiance like kind of doubled down on what they played yesterday. I don't know who you're planning on killing on the SSG side. You're not going to be able to dive a Morgan who's going to be turning into Nike or a Sun Wukong. Rama lasts for 10 seconds in the air, and then he's got Ganesh peeling for him. Yeah. And then the dive that Ganesh, Sun Wukong, Rama, Morgan can turn it, like, how are you going to dive SSG? SSG's going to be diving you. This is going to be a hard game for SSG to lose. They picked very, very well.
I say we see your dive comp and we raise you the safest thing we could have come up with, at least in this draft with all the bans that come through. It's looking good for them. The Amaterasu, as of right now, 100% win rate, so maybe they're playing around with that. And it's flexible, as you had highlighted, as to which one's going into the jungle. I mean, for SSG, this has a lot of weight. Same thing for Radiance. Whoever wins this one, not only ending up against Ghost Gaming as they go forward if they win the set towards the finals, but also that capability of getting first seed. There's so much riding on this one. Last time it was a Radiance 2-0. Do you think, even though that the pick strategy might not work out here, is the Discordia damage, the Cupid damage, or even the Nike slow enough to isolate them in a team fight, or is it all going to just not matter?
I mean, they do have quick pick potential with this Arquette. If Morgan's ever caught without her beads down, they can kill pretty easily, but I would lean SSG winning this game 90%. It's going to be really hard for them to lose this one.
Well, we'll have to see if they're able to do so. It's going to be hard, at least according to Inbound here, and I'm inclined to agree. Let's see what they have in game number 1.
Thank you on the desk there, Goremizer and Inbound, Bench and Mifflin, with Dave bringing us the views as we move into the very first game of Set 2. Who will be joining Ghost Gaming in the finals? We're about to find out here and now. If you think you know already, though, vote for us in the Twitch chat and let us know. We'll get those results up on the screen. But Miff, sounds like Inbound is leaning heavily towards SSG here with their ability to dive even better than Radiance. Are you leaning that way here as well?
It's hard to say. I think it's going to come down to a lot of execution on field because of Radiance's nature of draft. They've got a lot of pick potential to kind of separate themselves in the early game. Keep your eyes on adapting, whether or not he's getting involved in the early. But if Spacestation is able to transition themselves to the 20-25 minute mark from even, I think Bobby hit it right. Their dive potential is absolutely ridiculous. A multi-pronged threat, be it through the true dive of Sun Wukong and Amaterasu, or even the one-shot potential that Dardes is going to have of the carries on Radiance. It's going to be very hard to contend with all of that.
You did see Dardes accidentally letting those beads happen there in the jungle. No one knows on Radiance, so we'll see if it ends up mattering. Likely not, right, this early on in the game, but could potentially be something that ends up hurting later, so we'll keep our eyes on it. But you're right there, Nick, to note that SSG not only have great dive potential, but don't they have some great inlaid safety in their own draft as well? Just not a lot of great options for this Radiance team to look for later on. But this is such a big set, right? I mean, obviously that could be a bigger set than finals, but SSG, who's been up near the top, been beating everyone else in the league and only struggling up against Ghost. And then you look at Radiance, who had that slump in the middle of Phase 2, really looked like they lost their way. But now they found their way to right this ship. Which one of those, the consistency or the getting hot at the right time, which one of those is going to win out here in this set?
Couldn't tell you which one's going to win, but playing hot is one of the scariest things ever. It doesn't matter if you're the 7th or 8th seed coming into a LAN. If you are on hot hands, you might just walk away a world champion a la PK last year. But I think that Radiance, saying that they righted the ship is almost an understatement. They looked dominant yesterday. The
Yep.
gameplay, the game plan, the shot calling, it was all concise. It made sense exactly what we wanted to see. Adapting was playing a much more aggressive style throughout the duration of Phase 2. He was playing this more passive, I'm going to come in, finish off kills, that tried and true adapting style, but now he's been getting involved a little bit earlier on, and his team has really been benefiting from it. So I think today, again, we're going to be keeping our eyes on the jungler for Radiance. He's generally going to be the pace setter.
It really is, man. You talked about how Adapting's been playing a bit more aggressive lately, and that is exactly what SSG, or rather Radiance, need right now. It's what SSG would not like to see. This pick potential in the early game could neutralize SSG's strong late game. And you can tell how well both of these teams are playing. Those poll results, 56% to 44%. Hard to be a whole lot closer than that at this point. And I think that they're right, man. This could easily go all 5 games. This one here today. I mean, all 5 games close within each individual game as well. And then you have Ghost waiting for you in the finals who play a no warrior, no support comp as a Roar. Not quite able to invade that purple, though he went for it. These last 3 teams, man, it's hard to know which one's better. It just depends on the day.
It really does come down to exactly just that. Who's playing better right now in this individual set? And honestly, it's hard to say. Even just seeing how the fans voted was a 56% in favor of Spacestation. I think if you don't evaluate Radiance's play from yesterday, you'll just look at the standings, look at the duration of the year, Spacestation should be a much heavier favorite. But because Radiance is looking so strong right now when they absolutely need to, it's definitely swaying the vote ever so slightly. And right now, I think it's interesting that we're seeing such a slow pace from Radiance. I really thought that we would see Adapting potentially rotate into the duo lane and try and exploit the fact that Rapper is going to be pretty easy to shut down at this point, but instead both teams seem pretty comfortable just waiting for these more neutral objective centric fights. We might be looking at a farm fest until about the 10-minute mark.
Yeah, I mean, we're starting to finally get to the point where ultimates are up. Adapting still doesn't have his, so maybe he's waiting a little bit for that. He just ticked over to level 5 now, or maybe waiting till he finishes some of these items off, but it has been slow pace. I mean, Serket certainly can get it done even at level 3, right? I mean, Cobra's Kiss into Deathbane oftentimes is enough with the basic attack proccing all those poisons. He and Cheerio exchange blows in the jungle, but nothing leading to any actual serious fights here at this point. And kind of to what you said, maybe SSG a little bit happier than Radiance with that pace when they get to late game, when this Ama and this Ganesh are creating all of this space and Dardes and Boat can thrive in it. That is a scary time of the game for Radiance.
It really is. SSG, I think it's almost very sanguine-esque, the style that I think that they should approach this match with. If they're able to just elongate as long as they want, they should be able to win out pretty cleanly, but that doesn't mean that Radiance doesn't have ways to fight in. I think Aurora in particular is going to be a huge impact player come team fight phase, just to make sure that he's keeping Dardes peeled off. That ultimate, the Watery Grave, is nigh impossible for a Morgan to pass through.
Good patience there from Vote. Aurora was giving him the hands, but Vote holds on to the beads, doesn't overreact. Knew he had Raffer nearby if there were to be more pressure as well, so Vote holds on to all the relics. Radiance developing, not a meaningless 900, almost 1,000 gold lead up to this point as well. So this early game, we said it's been a bit slow, but Radiance have managed to find a small bit of an advantage throughout all of this. But we still have not seen either of these junglers be particularly active. Kind of as you alluded to earlier, that we might start to see the real differences being made here in this game. The big leads that'll be difficult to try and fight back from when Adapting and Cheerio start looking to make it.
I think the majority of that gold lead right now in favor of Radiance is around that duo lane. They've been really effectively farming. Aurora essentially has just been trying his best to be annoying, which is a loud Cyclone Spin to pull a slight lead, maybe about half a level, a couple hundred gold, and the rest of it is inside that solo lane. Benji's been able to control the pace of that fight. Nika's been forced out a couple times, so there's a minion disparity over there. But not really enough in any individual spot to make Radiance really feel favored in an engagement. It's not like Benji's got a level lead or even a level lead in the duo lane. So I think that wherever the fight should happen, it should likely be a mid.
It's Adapting first. That gets the beads out from Dardes. I think the Changeling came out too, but Tings is low in response. The apple lands onto Cheerio. That brings him low, so the ultimate now down for both Cheerio, Dardes, and Adapting and Tings. But Tings holds on to his relics, whereas Dardes doesn't. That should be relatively easy for Adapting, right? Later on, I mean, Morgan not the safest without the ultimate or relics.
Yeah, once Circuit ult is back up, Adapting's gonna be back in mid, and if he's able to find a kill first blood onto a Morgan, that is a huge swing for Radiance. A huge power imbalance should arise from that, and then from there, continually shut him down. You can zone him out, you can force him to sit under his own tower. The Morgan's early game is very easy to exploit, so I like this pressure that we're seeing from Adapting. It didn't succeed this time, but it certainly can the next.
Hunters trading ult for ult. I'd love to make that sound more exciting, but there's just no way to do it. Cyclone spin, drops the Fields of Love, Vote responds by heading up to the sky and makes it out of there easily. That's how that matchup's usually going to go over there when it's the Cupid and the Rom, and a bit surprised. I feel like we've seen the Rom in particular get a bit neglected this weekend, Mifflin, but Vote picking it back up and then using that ultimate to get away from the Field of Love there from Cupid as Aurora poked his head into red buff. He's got some backup Adapting here as well, but SSG were here on time. Rapper has the silence, but the red buff still not down. Aurora makes his way in. Now Adapting looking for the kills more than anything, drops the last breath, but takes a ton of damage on the Dharmic Pillars. Adapting makes his way out. Aurora does as well, and Space Station defend their red.
That Dharmic Pillars placement from Raffer, 4 ticks finds its way onto Adapting. Unfortunate situation, because it looked like Radiance really had control of that fight. Unfortunately, though, just Raff with a fantastic individual play is able to make that defense come through. But we see now what Radiance wants to do. They're really trying to leverage that early game fight potential, that pick potential that Circuit is affording them, and I like that. They need to continually try. They have to fight it out here. It seems like they've identified they don't want to take this late game team fight from even.
I like it. Adapting and Aurora have to be the ones, right? They've got to be those pace setters for them. They've got to be the ones putting constant pressure onto those relics of SSG, and in particularly Dardes, though he is starting to get a bit out of the woods, right? Only 18 seconds away from his beats being back up. His ultimate's available again, too. Adapting should have the pressure to force those cooldowns, but not to actually get a lead. Meanwhile, Nika does have the lead. Look at these network charts. Nika, or rather Benji, excuse me, is at 5,700. That's about 700 ahead of Nika at this point, so Benji in a great spot.
He really is, and that's because this lane's been left alone, and Benji's got the better end of the 1v1 every time as Vote. What are you doing,
Whoa!
bud?
He doesn't use the ultimate. Can he win this trade here with his own ultimate? It does get Cyclone Spin low. The minion wave comes back. Vote a bit greedy with that one. Maybe thought that Dardes could rotate in or something like that, but it ends up being no harm, no foul. Keeps the relics, makes it out alive. He is going to have to back, though, while Cyclone Spin gets some farm.
Dangerous situation, man. Playing with fire. If he was going to commit the ultimate no matter what at the end, had to use it a little bit earlier on, it wouldn't have forced him into that situation where he's literally one auto attack away from dead. It seems like he was just hesitant. He wanted to hold on to it. He was able to win out in that auto trade initially from within the Fields of Love. So had he landed maybe 1 or 2 more, he could have potentially found the 1v1 kill on his own, which is the play that he's going for, but I don't think you need to play that dangerously.
These side lanes for Radiance, though, are looking good as Radiance are here again, considering a red buff invade. Doesn't work this time as SSG are ready. Into the backline goes Dardes. He has the Changeling ultimate, and Tings is low, but he's evasive as well. There's the last breath from Adapting. That lands down onto the priority target, and it's Cheerio. That is removed first. First blood goes over to Radiance. Nika makes his way in late, but so is Benji. Uses the Sentinel of Zeus. That keeps the rest of the team out, and now Nika in some trouble on the Somersault Cloud, though. Healing up and back in the tier 1. The leap from Benji off the mark. And Radiant find first blood, but nothing else.
Yeah, Dardes transforms into the Circuit there and wasn't quite able to find that priority target like Adapting was. Cheerio left high and dry off of the Dazzling Offensive, means that he's going to fall pretty easily. We saw immediately the rest of Space Station try and disengage themselves so that the poison doesn't spread, which creates another favorable situation for Radiance. Now the fight is split up. Benji wins the rotation. Nika shows up a little bit late, and it's just a clean disengage from there. But that was a thin margin. 2 members of Radiance, Adapting and BMT, make it out with what? A quarter of their health, if even. Space Station is able to fight in, but this gold lead is starting to become a little bit ridiculous considering we're only looking at 1 kill, nearly 3K separating these 2 teams.
Pretty impressive, right, that Radiance were able to take that fight with such confidence, but I think that comes from these side lane leads. They knew Nika, or rather Benji, be able to get there just a little bit ahead, and had they needed it, they could have gotten that kill. I mean, think about how low Raffer was on the tail end of that, and Dardes as well. That fight could have easily gone better for Radiant, or as you said, maybe even gone the other way for SSG. I mean, how long did BMT juke around in there using that stealth inside the erratic behavior? Just well played there from both teams, but Radiance come out just that bit better and now are able to extend that lead even more. I mean, they're close to a 3K gold lead already.
But we saw the pacing of that fight. SSG bought the fight to Radiance. They're fighting on Radiance's tower line. It's that dive potential that we were worried about earlier on. Had SSG been there in numbers from the offset, I think it's completely different engagement. They're fighting into a 2,000, nearly 3,000 gold lead already, and the fights are this even. That's just the strength of SSG's draft. That's why Radiance is trying to establish this lead so early on. I think we're going to be keeping our eyes on the objectives very soon. If Radiance is able to take another engagement like that, Gold Fury is definitely on the menu.
And they've been doing this, right? Radiance have wanted to be here for that red buff invade. SSG responded to it last time by looking for that fight and just weren't quite able to completely get that fight to go in their favor. So Radiance give up on the red buff this time around, make sure that they've got these oracles and the vision on this Fury as well, and that they know if anything starts over there. But I doubt it's SSG looking for it, right? Radiance are the team that could be potentially looking to try and start up this Gold Fury. Maybe not the greatest confirm from these mages on either side, but when you've got the team fight lead, when you're the one with the Discordia passive on your team, then you feel pretty favored in those fights.
But SSG does have the potential to sneak away with an objective. Their burn is ridiculous. Amaterasu passive, Dharmic Pillars, even Vote on this ROM already is going to be shredding objectives absolutely. So if Radiance tries to put pressure on the solo side of the map or even move in towards the Pyromancer, the easier of the two to confirm, they have to be worried about Spacestation's ability to just go to the other objective and burn through it instantly.
This has been such a patiently played game from Radiance, though, where they're picking their spots and making sure that the timing matches up for them. Now take a look here for Adapting. He went with that sledge right away, followed it up with that Brawler's Beat Stick. This is a point, and he got the BAT made a level 12 already. This might be a good point for Adapting to be looking to try and get a bit aggressive with this 3-item power spike completed and having the additional help of the secondary relic there.
And that Brawler's Beat Stick early on means to me that Adapting is looking to leverage this lead in the early game. Normally when we see Surcat in Season 7, it's a much more Bruiser-centric build. The Anchile, the Runic Shields, the Voids, things along those lines. But Adapting's looking to burst down targets.
This makes sense. They go right to the Gold Fury first. Fields of Love comes out as well, but that's 2 ultimates committed onto Raffer, and he looks pretty good considering that was the Last Breath and the Fields of Love all committed to him. And I think, yeah, Radiance kind of have to give this one up at this point. I mean, Raffer doesn't blink at all. He doesn't even use the shell, as now there's a little bit of action in mid. Benji and Cheerio exchange blows. Radiance might have to settle for this red buff invade, and they will indeed look to be taking it. But Cheerio and Nika are on their ways to contest. Benji the only one on it as Aurora is zoning, and now they might get a bit collapsed on. The silence is there. So that means Aurora into the watery grave. They've got Cheerio locked down. The Leaf there to follow up as well. But Cheerio living through it all. Finally, that Apple of Discord comes through, and that gets them the kill. Nicolo barely makes it up to the Somersault Cloud, and his healing is not going to be enough. Adapting closes the gap, but the blink there from Nika. He makes it out. Radiance get 1 kill and the red buff.
And now look at the ultimates available to Spacestation. They still have Vote, so the snipe is available for the steal, but he goes up so early.
They don't have the information, I suppose. They've got a ward on it, so maybe they know, but SSG, strip that away. That's huge in this early game where Radiance had all of the momentum. They strip away the Fury and keep this one close.
All Radiance had to do was wait. They'd already forced Nika back to base. Cheerio's dead. Vote goes up into the air when it's at 30%, but Radiance challenge him to a confirm race. You're not going to win that one, I guess. Space Station, from the brink, are able to call themselves back into the game. They maintain that gold deficit. It's still 3,000 in favor of Radiance, but that would have been a back-breaking play had Radiance been able to walk away with that objective. Space Station effectively buy themselves another 5 or 6 minutes of the game.
And I think that comes down to how well SSG played that fight initially, right? I mean, think about Radiance's heavy commitment onto Raffer, how well SSG bought time around the red buff, and then maybe a little bit of stubbornness there from Radiance on the Fury, but either way, SSG find themselves in a great spot.
Just such a head-scratching play. They had complete vision there as well. With Aurora's positioning, they could legitimately see Vote on the mini-map in the air. All they had to do was not hit it, but instead, Radiance, I guess it was a bit of stubbornness. Maybe they overvalued their own ability to confirm the objective, but Discordia, not really the biggest burst mage in the game for objectives, got just beat out there. Now we're in a pace where Radiance doesn't really have anywhere to go to force this early fight. They could try and group up around this Pyromancer and play around their solo lane, but then they're going to be losing out on one of their best team fight ultimate. Cyclone Spin is going to be stuck in the duo lane for a while longer. I think we might see both teams fizzle out and go back to farming.
Nika moves out first. Good silence from Rafford means that, or rather Benji. I don't know why I want this Nike to be Nika so much, but it is indeed Benji, and unable to get the pressure with Rafford's silence there to prevent it. Radiance are grouped. Everyone except for Cyclone Spin are all together, so they might be looking to get aggressive. They're starting to walk down this mid-tier 1 tower, but SSC are still in position as if they want to defend. Aurora has made his way around and underneath, but Cherio is there to meet him. Now Radiance move in, looking to brute force the tier 1. Vote has made his way into the fight, ahead of Cyclone Spin. That's good damage onto Aurora. The tier 1 tower still stands. Dazzling offensive comes out because Nika is wrapping around the top side, and they have already got big man teams low. Dharmic Pillars has him trapped in the middle, and Nika gets the cleanest kill of his life. Vote responds, though, with 1 as well. That makes it 2 for 0 in favor of SSG. This mid-fight force down from Radiance has not worked. And now they're playing defensively underneath the tier 1, but Cherio is in with the blink, with the dash, and Cyclone Spin is dunked by Nika. They get the return kill onto the Amaterasu, but it is absolutely not worth.
It is, and one misstep from Radiance, over aggression on the tier 1 tower with nowhere to go. Frustration sets in after a failed Gold Fury attempt. They want to find a lead somewhere on the map, and they weren't quite able to even confirm that tier 1. Space Station, off a slow rotation from Nika, is able to find an advantageous fight. Cherio's dazzling offensive there is the changer. If it doesn't hit 3 members perfectly, then there's no way Space Station has any way to even confirm that engagement. The disengage would have been just fine because of how slow Nika's rotation in was. Radiance needs to clean this up, man. They can't be making small mistakes, and that was a small mistake, because once you're playing against one of the best teams in the world, that's all it takes to separate the match.
And I think that SSG were just a little bit more ready there than Radiance anticipated, right? I mean, Vote gets there a little bit ahead of Cyclone Spin, right? Nika was on that slow rotation the whole time. Radiance were initially correct that they had the 4-on-3, but Space Station flipped those numbers a little bit quicker than Radiance were ready for, and they turned that fight around. And talk about what Nika and Cherio were able to do for them in that fight. And Raffer's Dharmic Pillars, Luck and Tings was excellent as well. The SSG, man, one of our better team-fighting teams in the league, and they just put it on display.
And we got to see a triple shot from Vote from the air as well. I mean, we know this man's going to hit the ultimate. He's stealing objectives and he's stealing lives as well. Radiance, finally able to pick up that tier 1 tower, but they've lost out on so much map pressure. That tier 2 being gone for Radiance means that subsequent Fire Giants, Gold Furies, Pyromancers are going to be so much harder to defend if Space Station elect to pick it up themselves, because the retreat paths for Radiance essentially are gone.
Nika will eventually claim the tier 1 tower in solo, so that evens that solo lane up just a bit. I mean, when you think about how much pressure that Benji had at the start of this game, just kind of building a lead himself in that matchup, even Cyclone Spin was a bit ahead of Vote over there, but now Vote has the lead. Nika has evened things back up, and now that we're 20 minutes into the game, that dive potential for SSG that we mentioned is starting to rear its head. And Radiance are going to struggle, especially if SSG can start the fight on their terms with this Changeling ultimate. Going to be real tough for Radiance to win it.
And to talk about the dive potential of Space Station, we're not even bringing up the fact that Radiance's draft really only has one strong disengage tool. Fields of Love likely going to be used majority of the time for engage. So you're looking at Watery Grave to separate the divers from Big Man Tings, from adapting if he's playing in the back line. It's going to be very difficult for them to survive through the dazzling offensive. Essentially, after that, Aurora has to use his own ultimate. Then what are you going to do once Somersault Cloud comes through, or if Dardes turns into a secondary Amaterasu? This dive is stifling from Space Station, due in large factor Radiance's inability to disengage.
Wow, all of Radiance's kills are on Cherio, and look where Cherio is in the XP per minute charts. He's actually slightly ahead of adapting. If you think about it in terms of where Radiance have been able to effectively spend their time, then Cherio has negated it as Cyclone Spin seems to be starting up the Gold Fury. They're not heavily committing to it. Now that SSG have shown some presence here, this fight could be so critical here this time. Can SSG hold on to the momentum, or can Radiance find a way back in They're still not heavily committing to this Fury at this point, though, as Dardes takes a little bit of a battle with Aurora. Nika's low, so in goes Benji. But over to the left side, a 2v2, starting to favor SSG. There's that Sentinel Zeus coming out from Benji, though, to slow down a couple of members.
Nice
Dharma
ults.
Pillars locks them in as well. That's going to make it harder for Nika to disengage. Up to the cloud he goes, so he should be okay for now. But Vote is being run down. Meanwhile, Nika in the back is doing the same thing to Big Man Tings. And that means SSG have the slight lead, at least for now. Both snipes forced to disengage. Rapper pulled the wrong direction. Maybe Radiance can pull a kill back. Cyclone Spin does it for him as it's 1-for-1.
Fantastic play, but Cherio still moving forward. The chase is on. Space Station's winning.
They think that they can keep this fight going, and there's the Tiger Stun landing onto Aurora, who gets melted. Boat's damage, Cherio's damage proved to be too much, so that means SSG now can choose where they want to go. They have the 4v3 advantage. Boat's still healthy. That means they can do this next Fury. And Myth, Radiance, has their window already closed? I mean, this is now, what, 2 team fights in a row where SSG came out the winners.
It's not that the window's closed. We saw maybe a bit of execution error there. Cyclone Spins feels a love, doesn't really get much value. Adapting is largely isolated by the Dharmic Pillars from Raffer. But we saw a small example of how Radiance is trying to address these late-game team fights. They're trying to separate the attack power of Space Station. Benji and Aurora traded aggro of Vote using their Thorns to essentially try and force him out of the engagement completely. But Vote plays it so well. The second that Benji engages, he rolls out, and it takes another fight elsewhere. Once Aurora tags in and pops his own Thorns, Vote goes into the air and snipes from there. He's essentially saying, okay, if you want to dedicate attention to me, we're going to win the fight elsewhere, and that's exactly what Space Station did. I think Radiance has the opportunity to fight in, but the people who are addressing the backline threats from Radiance aren't really the ones that I want to see. We want to see Adapting find his way into the back line, either on a to Dardes or Vote, or we want to see Big Man Ting somehow able to find the damage output off of a pool from Aurora. But so far, the damage has been lacking.
Well, Adapting has moved into a tankier build. The Pridwin makes a ton of sense on Cirquette, right? Right when she's in the thick of the action with that last breath is when she'd love to be a bit tankier, and this Pridwin gives it to her. As Radiance have this Pyromancer low, in fact, Radiance have the Pyromancer all together. Aurora does a decent amount of zoning, and SSG can't make their way in. In fact, Aurora wants to keep right on fighting, push into the watery grave. Wasn't really able to completely separate anyone. In fact, now Aurora's taking a ton of damage. Dharmic Pillars is there to isolate him. The Golden Apple makes its way to Raffer in the back. He's low, but okay, as Benji dives the tier 2. That forces Vote up to the sky with his own ultimate. Trades some damage back, not quite enough though, as Raffer ends up falling. Adapting gets that kill, so Radiance's aggression near the Pyro pays off.
And finally, Radiance finds a fight where they're able to separate SSG. Cherry doesn't make it to that engagement until after Rapper already falls. But now it's not over just yet. This defense is still doable. Dazzling Offensive and Somersault Cloud still available. Radiance got to play very smart around fire.
And the Changeling, right? What is Dardes going to turn into this fight? Could be huge, but Benji has the knock-up. Cheerio in trouble. Dash gets him out, and the Fire Giant still active. It's still low as well, and Radiance barely secure at the tail end. So close there was that from being taken away by Dardes, but the Golden Apple lands on him. Now he's low and stuck in the middle. Somehow survives for a moment, but Benji eventually cleans the kill up. Cheerio has to run as well. And Radiance, that was a tightrope they were walking there, Myth, but they get the fire and the fight.
A clean fight as well, able to separate Space Station, desync the death onto Dardes, so now 40 seconds until your mid laner's back and available to take these fights. Cheerio hasn't gone back to base yet either. Radiance is in a very good spot now to take whatever they want. I imagine they might even make the attempt for this right side Phoenix, because we're still looking at 30 seconds left on the Morrigan.
And no ultimates available for SSG either, whereas Radiance have 3 of their biggest team fight ults. They have the Phoenix down to half already. There's the engage from Benji. Dharmic Pillars locks in Cyclone Spin, but he's A-okay with that one. Adapting keeps Cheerio out of the fight, and the right side Phoenix goes down pretty cleanly there from Radiance. You talked about it, Myth. You said the window wasn't closed yet. They needed to engage a bit better, and I think Radiance just showed it to us. Fire Giant and a right side Phoenix.
Absolutely, and Space Station caught asleep at the wheel. Their dive comp doesn't work if they don't have all the pieces there. Cherio was 10, 15 seconds late to that engagement. I said it earlier, you can't make small mistakes against Space Station. The reverse is true for Radiance. If you're not bringing 100% to every single engagement, you're gonna get punished for it. So now Radiance with Fire Giant, the right side Phoenix down, and 3 towers still available, have so much passive gold to pick up on the map. They could back up to the Primal Fury on the tail end. They don't even really need to pick up another Phoenix to get full value out of this Fire Giant, but that doesn't mean that they can't. Their ability to siege into these full 5-on-5 engagements is very strong. Space Station's dive is good, but their Phoenix defense, their tower defense is a little bit lacking because they don't have a standard mage. They're lacking the ability to find AoE burst.
And I want to give a lot of credit to Radiance and Aurora in particular for that last fight. I don't know if you remember how I started it off, but I was surprised by Aurora's just aggression, right? Him pushing in the watery grave. But remember how many resources he got committed onto him. The Dharmic Pillars were used to try and get him out of there. Vote ends up having to snipe when Benji follows up under the tower. That aggression from Radiance was so well timed. It helped break up that combo you mentioned for SSG, the way that all the pieces need to line up. And I think that's how Radiance played it well. Now here they are sieging on this duo side Phoenix. SSG are here. SSG don't have beads though for Vote. No Aegis for Dardes. That could make this push a bit more difficult as Cyclone Spin moves in. But they're not hard committing to this Phoenix just yet.
Space Station putting up a soft defense there. If Radiance are able to work their way in a couple more times already, we saw what 3 auto attacks from Cupid are able to do. Space Station's going to engage soon.
They drop the Dharmic Pillars. Nika blinks to the backline, and Cheerio there as well. And look how low Tings is already. Has to use the Aegis. The Fields of Love dropped on him as well. Great commitment from SSG, and they blow up Tings quickly. Their Phoenix is A-OK healthy, but Benji trying to walk down Vote. Great disruption, though, from Rapper that keeps Vote alive. Even the peel there from Dardes as well. What defense, but adapting gets Nika, and suddenly Radiance are pushing in anyway. Vote is low. Can't make it back to the Phoenix. Back to the fountain. That is adapting there for the defense. A double kill goes to the Circuit. Now the left side Phoenix is down, and Radiance have somehow saved this siege.
If Adapting doesn't find that pick there, there's no way they can look for the end, but without Vote, Space Station in a tough spot.
They're gonna make this one work, aren't they? Adapting taking too much damage, Aurora trying to stick it onto the actual Titan, but Cyclone Spin taking damage, so Adapting goes for Dardes. Cyclone Spin is there for the backup, and Adapting showing up when Radiance need him. A big fight onto the Titan, and Radiance get the win! That's how the Circuit shows up for you.
Fantastic play from Adapting, and that's exactly what we need to see, this aggressive play style. He's jumping into the back line. You're at your fountain, you're not safe there. It takes a while to heal up. One auto attack is all it took from him. If he doesn't find that kill, no shot at an end attempt. They might look for another Phoenix, they might back up to Gold Fury, but because Vote falls, their defense was so weak from SSG. No damage potential, no threat. Your Titan's the only thing dealing anything to him. That's clean. Radiance, fantastic game.
And remember how SSG start that fight off though, right? I mean, they get the clean kill on the Tings, they peel for Vote at the back of the fight. I thought SSG had done everything they needed, but I didn't calculate in the Adapt King. That's on me on that one. Radiance finding game number 1, but we know this is going to be a good set. Quick break. We'll be right back with game 2.
Oh, big fan of that one, coming right back into this one. Game number 1 goes, honestly, a way you would expect it in some ways, I guess, in the fact that it goes to late game team fights, and in no ways, which is SSG managed to get a Fury steal and lose the game. That Fire Giant fight towards the end there, inbound, was very important. And then, of course, the all-important adapting, just, I guess, storyline that exists behind him, what he is as a human and what he can bring on this circuit is just so impactful.
Yeah, I think that is the last game you'll see adapting on Circuit. It should be gone. He is playing very, very well, and in every game that he's had it, he has carried Radiance so far. I think that should be the last game that you'll see this weekend with Circuit.
I mean, it's so ridiculous to think about. Like, this has been performing incredibly well for him, but yesterday when they just finally decided to deal with the circuit, he just pulled out the Daji and still looked good on it. I think SSG are going to have to tackle a lot of problems there in the picks and bans, and honestly, maybe a little bit of problems in terms of their engage in the fight. Unfortunately for this game, you know, the one that was kind of the conversation going into this was this Wukong, the Amaterasu. You had actually said that you'd prefer to see the Amaterasu solo. El Cherio still took it into the jungle, and it did not quite hit the mark that you would want out of the jungler here.
Yeah, I just think Amma plays in the jungle so weird. You kind of have to build her a little bit of a tanky, otherwise she's just not going to be able to get her entire, like, kit's damage off. She just plays way better in solo, and Wukong plays fine in both roles. And as you can see, Cherry struggled to get damage off. He struggled to live in team fights. He just was not doing enough that he wasn't doing what a jungler needed to do. I think if you put the Wukong into the jungle, Amma into solo lane, I think their dive just feels better, and their team fights feel better.
Yeah, 0, 4, and 6 there for the Amaterasu out of the jungle. Not necessarily what you want, especially when you look at the other side, and it's 6, 1, and 2 for adapting. A lot of kills picked up, especially at the end there. I mean, just kind of popped off at the right moment. You can tell by his damage that he was able to come through. And this was something that was kind of, it's easy to meme, but it was kind of the conversation yesterday. Yes, he's the lowest damage on his team, and he's just barely beating out Raffer. I guess 3K is enough over a Ganesh that you can feel confident that you're going to beat him. But realistically, it's the setup that he brings as well. In this case, he got a lot of the last hits, but yesterday, his slash line didn't look that great. It was just being able to jump in, grab someone, throw them back into the Sharks, and let them tear them apart. And it feels like that's really where a lot of his utility is coming from here.
Yeah, their entire comp is just designed to kill who adapting goes on to. If adapting ults a carry, ult a tank, usually you won't ult a tank, but if you ult a carry, that carry will die. And shout out to Benji, too. Benji played that Nike very, very well. They could not deal with him. The only time he really actually died was on the Phoenix when he took like 2k damage from Tower, or from Phoenix. So, like, shout out to both of them. They were just carrying those team fights, and whoever adapting ulted was just dying every fight.
Oh, right now, SSG really need everything to kind of level out for them. That game, it just felt maybe a little back and forth, but at the beginning of it, Radiance were driving, and then at the end of it, Radiance were driving. Whatever happens in the middle doesn't matter as much as long as the Titan goes down and you see victory across your screen. So we'll see if Radiance can keep this up and maybe keep the momentum from yesterday going, or if SSG can finally stop them at least a little bit here as we get to picks and bans for game number 2. If you're coming into this outside of the circuit, is there anything else that you need to tweak in these picks and bans, or is it really just target out the circuit, especially over the Raw that they banned last game?
Yeah, I think their picks and bans are fine. The Raw was a little weird, but BMT played it really, really well yesterday, I mean. So just keep the bans for the most part the same, and then just ban the Circuit away and just see where that game will take you.
Well, so far, Persephone comes through. Aphrodite, not too surprising to see on the other side there. It feels like, again, because you have to focus so much on Dardes, it's difficult to try and tackle him. But maybe they'll be able to do so. They didn't play in the last playoffs. I was trying to look up to see if they had any history, at least in our online lands that we're having this year, for anything that's changed. But Radiance were able to make it to the finals last time around. The question will be if they can find themselves that easy path up there. The Raw gets banned again, and I kind of glanced over this last time. BMT's a good Raw player, so yeah, it works out pretty well. Raw's pretty solid. But does he deserve a ban, especially a top ban, when you see adapting performing so well on the circuit?
I think they're just more worried about the healing than anything. Ra's a good god. He provides just a ton of utility, damage, healing. And you kind of know what you're going to get and know what you're playing against with Circuit. She's just going to dive one person, try to kill one person. And I think that is just what they'd rather deal with than dealing with the Raw heal and the Raw objective, just like overall objective prowess. So just keeping the Serket open, and I like the Nike takeaway because Benji did do a lot of damage, but you're just gonna get the Serket here, and Radiance is happy with where they are right now.
Yeah, Serket, and something SSG, we were kind of talking about it, but they didn't buy Sunder at all last game, so maybe had a little more trouble with the Nike late game than we would have seen otherwise. But if I'm Radiance, yeah, I'm locking in the Serket. I mean, maybe you can convince me Dodgy is fine. I think either one, if you give it over to Adapting, is fine. And yeah, they're going to go ahead and grab that one. And this is the question. Nike has also kind of bounced around a few roles. More than likely, do you think it going to Nika, or could you see Cherio trying to take another warrior into the jungle here?
I could see Cherry playing it just because they like having these flex options, but I would like to see it go to Nika, and I think it'll go to Nika. I just hope to see the Sunder picked up. Sunder just makes Nike's job impossible. She can't just dive and just sit on a carry's face. She will die. If you go Sunder, Nike will die. Just pick up the Sunder, and Nike will not be a problem.
I mean, there's so much that can go wrong with it, and like you said, it kind of just not only causes her to die, but it just cancels it out. Otherwise, you're getting out of there for free, which I think is what Radiance were able to showcase last time. This Cupid, we were kind of question marks around it. Again, it was just the discussion that Cyclone's been. Sometimes he wants Cupid, sometimes he wants Heimdall, and I guess you just give him whichever one he wants on the day. Today seems to be a Cupid day, and so they lock that one in. But it's the Kabrak, and this was actually banned away by Radiance last game against SSG. And you look, Aurora's been playing this, and you play with someone in the jungle that likes to bring some off-meta picks in there. This Kabrakan feels like someone that's going to go to Cherio, to me.
Yeah, it just strikes me more of a Cherry god than a Raffer god or even a Nika god. Maybe it's a scrim thing, and that's why they banned it in the second half, because you really didn't see SSG playing it too much in the regular season, so maybe Cherry's just been pulling it out and just kind of fragging with it in scrims. It's really the only thing I can think of, because Radiance wouldn't ban it from themselves because they're the ones that play it more than SSG does.
So something that's, again, kind of been in the history and existed for Cherio, but more than likely cropped up in the last week or two as these teams have been practicing for this. Jingwei locked in, very safe overall. Discordia locked in, good for BMT. Good damage, good passive that comes from her. I would argue, at least right now, both of these teams are feeling pretty solid and very much like themselves. The Nike might be the only thing that has a distinct counter on the board that's easily done, I should say. So it'll come down to these bans. So it's Morgan that joins the ranks. I mean, what do you pick in mid against BMT's Discordia? Is there an easy way to deal with her?
I don't think Disco's really a problem for most mages. The Disco is mostly picked for safety and just to get off a bunch of damage when she's getting dove. And she's a good pick into Kabrakan. If Kabrakan throws up the walls, she can jump out of it. I really Hera should be banned here by Radiance because that's the last god that Dardes has shown that he plays a lot. And after that, I don't know where Dardes will really go.
It does take away a lot of his, I don't even want to call him crutches, but just his main pool, right, that comes through, and it will be that Hera, as you call for. Kuzenbo on the other side, though. With Kabrakan taken away, Kuzenbo picked up. It feels like Aurora is trying to get kind of, I want to say stuffed in a box. They're trying to lock him away as best they can. They're also going to take away the Wukong, so that matchup in solo lane is maybe a little easier for this Nike. I'm curious to see what Radiance do. Hercules has been the talk of the town all year, literally until the last few weeks, and then all of a sudden he just kind of fell off of the planet. And as of this weekend, at least for Radiance, it's been this Ares pick for Aurora that has been a pretty big factor for them. It was banned last game, that we got to see it a lot yesterday. Do you like it locked in here?
Yeah, I was going to say, there's no way he doesn't play Ares here. Ares is just a really good pick into the Kabrakan also. If Kabrakan starts with the Blink, you can kind of just focus him and just try to kill him a lot early. And he did look really good on it last game, yesterday, and that's why they did ban it. Now, whatever sets Serket's diving and Ares are diving, they can just kill whoever Serket's ulting.
Well, that on her locked in here. If I remember correctly, we were talking about it yesterday, and there was a discussion about Ares being maybe the counter here to the on her, at least helping deal with it. I mean, at least for the Ares, this is straight up a matchup that Radiance had yesterday. On her Geb was something the Knights played against them for SSG. I don't know if this is the right call. I mean, do you like the way the Geb's bringing in the shield? It is always helpful, getting that CC immunity helpful, but how does this matchup go in the duo lane? Can SSG hold their own?
I think Geb just makes you lose lane too hard. The only reason I could see Geb being played right now is just because Radiant's entire comp is just designed around to kill one carry, and Geb is just trying to prevent that. I like the pick, but I don't know if it can live past the laning phase or if it'll even be enough late game to warrant the pick.
That's the thing, and I can say this, you're a fellow support player. I love playing Geb. I feel terrible when I play Geb, though, because at the beginning of the game, I don't feel like I'm providing anything. I do wait for those late game, the Cataclysms, the shields that come through. Either way, Cucullin on the other side versus the Nike, it's the last matchup to really look into. Cucullin's not picked up too often, but he doesn't really perform poorly when he comes in. Is he just another mainstay warrior that can hold his own?
Yeah, I think he's just like a Benji staple. He's just gonna go blink thorns, just dive the backline, and just try to kill with adapting.
And you know what? There's a good chance we will see exactly that kind of play at some point in this game, considering adapting's been the driving factor here on the circuit. A lot to do here for SSG, and maybe a lot to prove. Yesterday, the Knights brought some of these picks. Actually, my mind just blanked. On her Geb, it could be Jingwei Geb over there. There's 2 hunters locked in. On her, it's more of a Dardes pick than it is a Vote pick. This might be an easier lane for them, knowing that Jingwei's going to be there.
Yeah, I actually didn't even notice that either. That's 100% going to be on her mid. And now, playing a dual lane with Jingwei Geb, I think if you want to handicap yourself in the 2v2 in the early game, that is the way to do it, picking Geb and Jingwei.
Oh no, well, that's maybe not what you want to hear right now if you're an SSG fan, but it's exactly what you want if you are Radiance or their fans. Going into game number 2, they're going to try to keep this streak going. SSG want to end it.
Well, thank you all in the desk there, Inbound and Gore. You guys are right. No way you put Jingwei and Geb over there in the dual lane, right? So Dardes plays it mid. Oh, and this Benji guy won a world championship on the Cucullin. Not going to wear the skin, though. They made that for you, bud. Put it on here in this game. So Myth, how do you like Dardes on the Jing mid? I think we've seen this from him a couple of times before. It certainly can work.
Look, I think that they put Dardes on Jing because they need Vote on the on-her if they want to have any chance of being able to fight into the 2v2.
Right.
But it's kind of a strange strategy. If you're going to pick a lane for the potential to win, you might as well put it in the lane where it can actually dominate. On-her into Discordia would have been very strong. Jingwei, sure, you're going to be able to farm up. You're not really going to die ever. You're very safe. If you're worried about adapting, putting his pressure there, you're very survivable on the Jingwei. But I think that they've essentially created 2 lanes now where they've got a very low chance of winning. If we want any pressure from the SSG draft, it's going to have to come from Nika out of that soul lane. And up against Benji, as you already highlighted, 1 Worlds on this pick. It's going to be easier said than done to find pressure over there.
Not going to be easy there for him. The only good news is, though, is that finally Nika is on the Nike, so I can nail that one here in game number 2. Benji, though, on the Cucullin this time is going to be a problem there for him, and he knows how to use the pressure from this pick. And remember, Benji just developed a lead last game without quite as much pressure, right, with the Nike matchup over there into the Wukong. So this time, I would not be surprised if Benji ends up a good bit ahead.
Yeah, we got to keep our eyes on that soul lane. It was just natural pressure able to force out Nika repeatedly, finding opportunities to invade back camps or even blue buff at times. But I think that Cherio, in particular, has a pretty strong matchup into the Cucullin, and the follow-up from Nike might be enough for them to try and allocate some of their pressure into the soul lane. That's one way that SSG can try and get ahead of the curve that Radiance has here. But Bobby's right, man. This duo lane right now, having a Geb over here into an Ares, that's volatile. If Raffer falls in the early, that might just hamstring SSG for the first 20 minutes. So I'd be surprised if we don't see Adapting at least make an attempt over there.
To just try and find a way to punish it, right? I mean, the other thing Inbound was saying, right, Bobby was saying, is Geb even good enough in the late game to make up for the fact that you've hamstringed yourself in the early game, right? And he has so little pressure over there, and he's not great fighting in the early game there either. Is Geb's late game good enough, would you say, or is he gonna struggle maybe the whole game?
Look, there's like, what, 7 billion people on the planet? Only one of them has shown me enough on Gab to warrant a pick even in the late game, and that's Raph, man. He'll hit a 4-man Cataclysm. He'll find the shields that turn around these fights. He'll be burning beads. I think that Rapper has a very unique style when he brings this Gab. He likes to have that blink early on because he knows how powerful just a moment, a second of CC can be, and then you have the unmitigatable CC, the un-DDR'd CC of just knock up after the stun. I think there's a lot of merit there, but it's kind of a similar conversation you have around Ymir. If Ymir falls down in the early, he's got just about 0 comeback mechanics. Geb's in the same place, and he's in a much worse way. I think that it's just so volatile, it's so risky, that's why we don't often see Rapper bring it out.
On the other side, though, this Ares is slowly becoming kind of a staple here in the support role. One of those gods that just kind of quietly in the background, been getting some buffs, and now here we're seeing him, you know, with that ability to help clear camps in the jungle, and how oppressive the chains can be on these characters that are so reliant on their leaps. Are you sold on this Ares in the support role?
Look, 408 busted it out yesterday, and not only did he turn me into a 408 fan, but also an Ares fan, and I'm sure Aurora has got a ton of experience on this pick. If he's able to chain Geb, rollout's down, when now he's just a Geb, we'll just kill him. Votes jump is faster, doesn't matter, you've been crippled for 9 seconds, maybe use your beads, and then lose your life later on. I think it's such a smart pick in the majority of SSG's draft. Nika needs the jump to engage, Dardes needs it for disengage. There's so many things that Ares is going to be able to just deal with on his own that he's essentially going to be beads burning without even having to dedicate his own ultimate, which is going to create space for adapting to engage on his own, or for Benji to do it as well. I think it's just a smart pick here.
Should be able to get a good punish on the Nika and Cheerio as well, if that is potentially who they want to look for. I'm interested in how Cheerio is going to look for this build path, right? Because, I mean, I know Geb, you know, has like the % damage on the ultimate, but they're going to need Cheerio to be outputting some damage from the jungle role, right? They don't have a ton of great magic damage on this team, so he might be particularly vulnerable later on in the game, depending on how he builds, or the whole team might be a bit vulnerable to some this defense, as Cheerio is low in the middle lane. I didn't think they'd go for him right away, but Cheerio ends up low and barely makes it out of there.
Yeah, Cherio's walking this thin line of, if he's not able to find himself with the lead, he is going to need to make up for the lack of magic damage from his draft through his own build, which means he's going to be sacrificing defensiveness. If he wants to play that initiator role that you associate with Cabrakan, he's going to need to stay even or ahead so he can maintain that playstyle. If he falls down in the early, that's just not going to work.
Or just walking up and taking your purple buff, I guess. Nearly half-healthing Raptor along the way there, too, so not a bad little little invade there for Roar as he makes this Ares pick work for him in this long lane. And you're right, I think, to point out the difficult spot that Cheerio is in with this Cabrakan, and I think that Aurora in particular is going to make that decision-making problem more of a problem for him, right? I mean, he has to deal with these chains, with potentially getting pulled in by the no escape, and even the damage output from Aurora as well. Life is not going to be easy for this Cabrakan in this game.
Yeah, no CC immunity from Cabrakan either, going for the blink early on, so if Aurora makes eye contact with this man and has a homie with him, yeah, I mean, Cheerio is just out of luck. They're going to have to take the fight during the duration of the no escape ultimate. If Aurora finds him first, I think that's just a win for Radiance. He's bringing so much pressure on the map just by nature of being Ares.
Oh, and Adapting can just bring Cheerio right to him. There's the no escape, and Cheerio is absolutely done. That was a bit more than we thought might normally be there, but Miff, I think that is how that engagement's gonna go more times than not for Cheerio.
Yeah, 6 more levels until Cheerio is going to be able to survive that situation, right? Until he can get those beads online.
Right.
And I think Aurora just figured it out. I mean, I saw it on his face. He had a sly little smile. He knows if I pull up Cherry, he's just dead.
Yeah, he's just going to be grabbed in, and it's the same, it's true for Adapting as well, right? Cheerio can't get out of the Cobra's Kiss into the last breath combo either, and if Tings is nearby, that's free food for him, right? He's gonna drop down the unruly magic, have a good time, put the apple on him, and Cheerio's gonna struggle. Now, I don't want to make it seem like Cheerio doesn't have the potential to do the same thing to someone on Radiance. If Cheerio gets there first and can drop his CC chain, it is potent, but I'm worried about his ability to get out of it in the other direction.
And the burst potential is lacking. Where's Cheerio gonna go? Maybe into the duo lane to fight alongside his on her, because Jing Wei isn't doing Discordia damage at this point in the game. I mean, Cheerio goes in, stun again, I'm trembling, all of a sudden a knock-up from Jing Wei, and then Big Man Tings jumps out, or Adapting jumps out, then scurries out with the first ability. It's going to be really hard to find the opportunities to find these kills. I think if SSG wants to fight pre-15 minutes, it's going to have to be a true 3-on-3. You don't want to take this 2v2 into Radiance's draft.
They are already moving as a 3-on-3, aren't they? Adapting, Tings, and Aurora clumped up just now. Well, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a good more of that, because they are going to be scary as a 3-man group right now. SSG don't have a lot of great ways to deal with it. Meanwhile, Benchy is, again, doing a good job over in this solo lane of getting some pressure. Already has this Gaia finished off. Meanwhile, Nika doesn't seem to have had a chance yet to back and finish his secondary item for whatever it is that he's going to be looking to grab. So Radiance across the map, as anticipated, are in a good spot here at the start of the game. Trapper just kind of walking at Aurora, roll out there to follow, and Aurora takes a bunch of poke. Dardes dashes in on this Jing Wei with the explosive bolts and is continuing to walk at Aurora. Where's the trade damage here? Aurora just takes his whole health bar for free.
Yeah, weird pathing from Aurora as well as he kind of dances around whether or not he wants to go back into lane. But that's all you could do there.
There, Cheerio now is in the middle of the chain we've talked so much about, and there is no way out. Now Rapper in trouble too. Benji getting in front of the rollout. Rapper does have the shield on himself. Nika has some peel as well. So Rapper will live, but Myth, that's 2 kills in 8 minutes, and all of them are Cheerio, and I don't see any reason why Radiance would slow down with that now.
Yeah, I mean, Aurora still has the ultimate, right? So Cheerio has to be afraid no matter what. Sure, you got killed by adapting ult, but that doesn't mean you're out of threats to worry about. I think that it's interesting that we didn't see Benji fully commit himself for that kill there. He was about to transform, but instead decided to vent the fumes and get rid of that rage meter. Had he transformed, he potentially might have been able to chase through and find Raph, but Radiance is commanding this early game. I don't think they need to speed up their pace. They figured out exactly how they want to win, and it's around killing this Gabrakan, and I can't fault them on the strategy because I can't find a weakness in it.
No, right? I mean, Cheerio for sure. I mean, the best that SSG can hope, I think, is to trade Cheerio because he for sure, if Radiance want him, is going to die, right? He just doesn't have a way out of that CC chain. Not Cheerio playing poorly. He doesn't have an outplay option to get away from that one. So maybe SSG can catch Radiance slipping a bit and over-committing and maybe find a way to punish them there in that spot. But take a look at this itemization from Aurora. Obviously, you want the aura items on Ares anyway, but this sovereignty makes a ton of sense when you consider how lacking for magical damage SSG are. And Radiance are going to use this window to steal some back camps, get adapting out of there scot-free, and SSG show up too late to the party.
And look at the optimization from Cheerio as well. He realizes, well, I'm the only one that can really apply Divine Ruin. Right. Divine Ruin is not the best item that you want onto Gabrakan. It's going to be lacking in burst. His ability to survive in these team fights is going to take a dive as well. I think that it's a necessary cause. You need that anti-heal, but that's just tough, man.
What? Bo just has this trend of being really greedy into Fields of Love, but that time it works out. Puts down the pillar to deny the auto-attack follow-up off the Fields of Love stun, and Vote makes out of there holding on to Desert Fury and beads. Maybe it'll come up big for him as Radiance are pulling the gold Fury. They have it down to half. Rapper has rolled his way in. The Fury has now been leashed, but now Rapper is in the CC chain. Radiance get the kill.
No, Cherry.
Cheerio is on his way in off the no escape, but Aurora is low too. They managed to make it support for support, but there's Tings cleaning up the kill on a Cheerio. It's a double for him. And now Radiance can still pull the Fury because Benji's in the fight.
It's just been such a slow roll, and Benji still has his ultimate. He's going to go in on his own, finds a 2-man knockup.
But this is big for Nika. He's into the backline looking for Cyclone Spin. There's the dash. Cyclone Spin's out, but Nika jumps back in. Can't find the damage. Dardes gets adapting elsewhere, and this is what SSG had to hope for, right? Was that a commit from Radiance? Wouldn't be clean, and they can get some return kills.
Yeah, interesting decision to not take the fight, instead trying to go for the objective. Off of the engage from Benji there, they should have been able to close the gap, and if the majority of Radiance dedicates themselves to the fight, Vote didn't have ultimate, Nika didn't have ultimate, Rapper had just respawned, it should have been a pretty easy decision to make, but Radiance instead try and take the Fury while Benji creates space, and Spacestation were able to punish that, even with having 2 early-ish game hunters, no real source of AoE damage, and some disjointed team fights as well. I think that Radiance, though, have already learned, again, exactly how these Gold 3 dances are going to go. If Cheerio has to engage the fight for you, you can just kill him. He's a Divine Ruin Gabrakan who doesn't have beads.
Not going to be a way for Cheerio to live through it. I wonder if maybe Radiance thought that Benji was a lot further ahead of Nika in that rotation than he was, because Nika kind of blew that whole thing up by going towards Cyclone Spin right when he got there. But it's kind of, as you say, right? Cyclone Spin's not isolated if they're all diving together on the back of Benji's initiation, so not sure exactly how that goes, but Radiance end up not able to take the Fury. But now it's SSG kind of pushing up onto Radiance's side of the map. They give up on that right away, though, and start to retreat as Aurora takes some free poke.
And look at the level disparity between supports here, and that's just a show of how much more pressure Aurora's had on the map. 2 levels up on the Ares over the opposition inside Geb, and Geb is strong in the late game. I don't want to make any qualms about that. He's not the best late game Guardian, but that's certainly where he flourishes. And Aurora able to pull a lead this early on, continually find pressure and slow down that rate of farm from Rapper is making it that much harder for the rest of the team to operate. If Rapper's not behind, it means that potentially Cherio could survive these situations with a Geb shield. But because he's still weak at this point, these Geb shields are just mitigatable. It doesn't really matter. It's not enough to stop Radiance.
It's Gold Fury take 2, and Aurora has pulled into the Field of Love is there for the follow-up, and that stuns 3. That means Vote is low, Cheerio is dead, and Rapper falls right behind him. What a way to start the team fight off, and Cataclysm came out too early. Benji gets the double kill, and just like that, Radiance find a 4-man wipe.
Man, Aurora finds a 3-man pool into 3 separate chains. Votes just had a look on as he gets decimated, and the rest of Radiance slowly meanders their way forward. It's a tough situation, man. I think it's really... The point of interaction was in P's and B's. This composition that Radiance has just wins out in the early game. There's no counterplay. Once Geb ultimate is down, he gets pulled in easily. Cherio, again, still not level 12, doesn't have beads, gonna continually get pulled in until that happens as well. And it creates so much space for the rest of Radiance to operate. Big man Tings doesn't really have to worry about getting dove because the dive of Radiance is so strong off the back of Aurora. Spacestation need to slow down this bleed, wait for the late game and fight when they're strongest, but Radiance isn't going to allow them that breather. They're going to keep forcing fights and force Spacestation to either bleed out from objectives or lose engagements in the jungle.
Yeah, I think SSG really get into trouble there because for a moment, I think it looks like they have a chance to collapse onto Aurora, but the no escape and Cataclysm timing favor Radiance there as Benji just kind of walking forward at SSG. SSG are on the retreat though because Radiance have 3 more members rotating in. Not gonna look for a fight there. Instead, they head towards the Pyromancer, collect this objective. And really, as you already covered, I don't think SSG have a whole lot of options to contest. Now, of note, Cheerio has hit level 12, but he hasn't backed yet. That means he doesn't have beads. He gets pulled in, but that time the tectonic shift does enough for him to escape. But in comes Adapting. Last Breath throws him away from the team. Doesn't matter. Cheerio can get beads now because he got sent to base the hard way. Fields of Love lands onto Rapper and Radiance. Find 2 plus Pyro.
It's so early on. I don't think Radiance can go to Fire Giant here, but they could definitely open up the map. Tier 1 tower, that's free. Tier 2 tower, might even look for that push as well. Vote is around with his ultimate, but without any real engage factor, there's not much defense potential. But Radiance happy with what they've gotten, realizing that they're winning these fights pretty cleanly, don't want to make the same mistake they made in game 1, and instead back up, play it safely, spend the gold that they've got. Luckily for Cheerio, as you highlighted, he's level 12, he's able to get the beads now, and I'm worried, man, it might be too little too late.
Vote managed to get stunned on the tail end of his leap. So Adapting gets that kill pretty cleanly. He and Cyclone Spin pairing up well there. But as you mentioned, we're only 16 minutes into this one, so Radiance a little bit stymied just by the state of the game.
8,000 gold, though. That's just such a sizable lead at this point. And look how many towers are left, okay? We're talking 5 towers on the map, 3 Phoenixes, Gold Fury in 2 minutes. There's nothing that Spacestation can be able to do before this Gold Fury respawns to close up this gap, which means that Radiance is likely going to be rotating into a Gold Fury fight with nearly 10,000 gold in their pocket over the opposition. It's so difficult, and already we're realizing Cheerio from behind isn't going to benefit from building defense. He needs the ability to one-shot someone on the other side, which is why he goes into the Spear of Desolation. But it's a double-edged sword. This man has been the target, the first one dying every single time for SSG. Spear of Deso is not going to change that.
No, he's going to have to hope that SSG get to start a fight at least a little bit on their own terms, right? And Cheerio lives for a moment, but if Radiance continue going to the well that is killing Cheerio, well, it's just as easy as it was the last time with the way that things have gone. They got to get beads out. That is something. But Myth, can SSG afford to defend this? Fire Giant started up by Radiance. You have to be careful. This is one of the only ways you can let SSG back into this game is if this fight doesn't go cleanly. Aurora stays on the FG. It's well below half HP. Mika nearby for the defense. Cheerio and Rapper making their way into Fire Giant down below 2k HP. Fields of Love is on it. Radiance gets the objective. Rapper pops like a balloon. There's Aurora with a no escape that pulls in Mika. Yes, they get one return kill from the Jing way, but that is the only thing that goes their way. Benji gets a double. Dardes barely trying to make his way out, and Radiance win that one cleanly. A triple kill for Benji and a 4 for 1.
Hey, at least Vote picks up a tier 2 tower on the other side. That's the best he could have done in that situation. So surprising that SSG don't really go for the steal attempt. They really take the fight straight into the Fire Giant pit. They were trying to disrupt Radiance and scare them off without their on her inside the fight. Double Hunter works, but it doesn't work unless both Hunters are there. That's a fight that Radiance is favored in every single day of the week.
Man, Radiance are looking so strong right now, aren't they, Myth? As Vote has been caught out here in the jungle. Both level 16, adapting, can't find the Cobra's Kiss as Vote strips away the red buff. But I wonder how long adapting will keep up this chase. He knows backup is coming. Ambush used to bait out that Impale. And now perhaps Radiance can find a way to loop underneath. Maybe not going to get there quite in time. Aurora on the wrong side of this rock, and they're not going to overcommit and evoke here. Instead, they're heading towards gold. Adapting goes in first, the Cobra's Kiss.
Wow.
The follow-up is there from that Spear of Mortal Pain, but Vote makes his way out of it. But Adapting comes right back in to finish what he started. Vote falls first. Benji gets rid of Dardes, and suddenly SSG are in an awful position. Fields of Love committed on the Rapper. He is Swiss cheese as Radiance cut right through him. And at this point, Myth, this one might just be out of reach. 10k, 19 minutes in. SSG need Radiance to make some mistakes.
Both teams were trying to spring a trap there. I mean, Vote could have disengaged himself at any point, but he sticks around trying to bait Adapting further and further into his own side of the jungle. SSG, unfortunately, get caught in a reverse trap card, essentially, as Radiance was also on their way to that engagement. I mean, tough situation. I understand what Spacestation is trying to do there. If they're able to find a pick onto Adapting, it mitigates a lot of the push.
It would have been so big for them, right, if they could have, but unfortunately it does not materialize. Mid-Phoenix falls. Primal Fury still standing, so the Radiance lead can balloon even further out of control. What a dominant game 2. And remember, Radiance had to play PK yesterday, right? And then into SSG, and then if this continues and they win this game, that is not guaranteed, by the way, but if they do, they have Ghost waiting for them. What a difficult path Radiance are walking right now, and they are doing it confidently. They're currently, what, 4-0 in this tournament, and looking like 5.
It really is looking like 5. 14,000 gold, 20 minutes in the game, almost 1,000 for every minute. Spacestation has ways in, but it's so far away. It's such a steep staircase that they're going to have to climb. Cherio's level 15, Geb's level 12. They're so far down at this point that it means that it really is going to come down to whether or not Radiance is willing to throw. And when they're playing as cleanly as they have been, I don't think that's something you can bet on here. But I don't want it to sound like Spacestation got blown out on the field. I think it really did come down to P's and B's. Radiance straight up just outdrafted them this time.
Yeah, Radiance said, hey, we can kill your Kraken on cooldown to the tune of 1-6-1 from Cheerio. And this guy is really good at Smite. He does not look like this often, but Radiance, I think, recognizing a bit of a vulnerability in this composition, were able to exploit it expertly. Now, they're cleaning up the last remaining Tier 2 tower. Fire Giant Myth falls off in 15 seconds. I assume Radiance will make their way back towards that, though with the way Benji's pushing up, I think they want to siege this left side Phoenix even without the Fire Giant. They've got a Fire Giant in terms of their lead, so I guess they don't need it. Aurora is the first man in. Benji Adapting are right behind. No escape is used to pull in, and the Fields of Love is used to deny the dive at the front of the fight. Vote dies on the precipice of his fountain. That makes Benji unstoppable. 7-0 and 8 for the solo laner for Radiance. They come back to the left side Phoenix. Rapper is the one that's in jeopardy now. Benji gets a second kill. The left side Phoenix falls. Nika, few paths for escape as Benji gets his third kill of the fight for a double. He's now 9 in a row as the Titan for SSG is in jeopardy. Down to half already. Cheerio trying his best to find another kill, but if he's not careful, he'll have his 7th death of the game. Radiance don't need it though. Titan goes down, and they're ready for game 3.
It's stifling, a vice grip, just a smothering. Yep. That's what that was. At no point was SSG allowed to play their game. It was an awful situation, man. I think it really does come down to P's and B's. I think Cheerio needs to find something he's more comfortable on. Maybe go back to the Kali, the Erlang Shen, the stuff you were seeing Pentas on just a couple weeks ago, because that draft right there, Clearly, Radiance has the answer.
Yeah, they had pressure in 0 of the lanes, right? Jingwei, Geb, Kabrakan couldn't even get off the ground in this one, and Radiance now ready for a third game. It'll be a quick break. We'll be right back with that third one.
Well, in Game 1, there was a little bit of murkiness in the middle when SSG were able to steal a Gold Fury, at least keep themselves alive in the game. In Game 2, you don't get any of that. It's all Radiance all day so far, and we're entering a realm where we're either going to see a 3-0 like they had yesterday, especially if they keep up this performance inbound, or maybe this is where SSG buckle down and we get the full reverse sweep. I mean, that's what you pray for, I think, as a SMITE fan, and mainly an SSG fan as well. But it's realistically just looking at this, a couple of picks, the Kabrakan as well as the Geb, didn't really work out too well that game, whereas on the other side, everything Radiance locked in just blew it out of the park. I mean, every single thing you would have wanted out of that draft happened.
Yeah, Radiance is actually just playing, like, almost perfect Smite right now. Their 3v3 is just not losing. Cyclone Spin is bullying out in the duo lane. Benji's rotations are just better than Nika's, and then when he gets kills, he, like, capitalizes, he's stealing farm. Radiance is just playing as good as you can play. The mistakes they're making are... There's no mistakes they're even making. I don't know what Spacestation can do to even slow them down right now, other than maybe ban the Circuit, maybe slow down adapting, and that'll maybe get them back into the game.
Yeah, try to control that, but it's a bad day when your carry is the lowest damage in the game. Unfortunately, that is exactly where Vote was here. And there were so many things, like we were talking about it, we were like, who do we even highlight? Like, can we highlight just one player? Like, Adapting did a lot of good early setup. Big Man Tings got a lot of the early kills, though, because of his damage and placement. Benji had some insane rotations. Like, literally every player on Radiance this game was just playing better than SSG, and there's no way to sugarcoat it, which is the downside, right? I think SSG, at least what we've seen consistently through the phase, have been able to be the better team. But this is one time, and so far playoffs are the right time to be popping off for Radiance to be able to come through, sweep the Knights, come through, almost at least put themselves in a position to try and sweep SSG and go to the finals. This is really big for them.
Yeah, I think Radiance looked good yesterday. Like, don't get me wrong, but they're looking great today. SSG was supposed to be one of the best teams in the tournament, and they are making them look bad. Radiance just looks perfect. I don't see what they're going to be. I just don't know.
Well, draft-wise, we've talked about it. Ares was banned in Game 1, and it slowed things down a little bit. Maybe that's something they go back to here in Game 2. But that Raw ban, BMT, he's a big impact player for Radiance, but maybe that's something that you replace with the Circuit ban, because the other big impact player right now in adapting is kind of driving it forward. I feel like BMT is going to play anything, and he's going to play it well no matter what. But we have, again, at least one more game for SSG to try and turn this around. They lose it, they're knocked out, they win it, and we at least go to game number 4, potentially find our ways into a reverse sweep territory if they can push it to 5, but they can only take it one game at a time now. You erase the first 2 from your memory, and you come into this thinking, again, it's just one singleton that comes through, and we'll have to see how they adapt. The first adaptation, though, SSG opt into second pick this time. And from your perspective as a player, does that make a big enough difference for you in picks and bans to maybe swing things back into your side?
I think it's just a good start. Like, you don't know how pick and bans are going to play out from this side, so you may as well just switch it up and just see what they are going to do now. This will allow them just to leave open a few more gods if they wanted to, and then just pick 2 good ones, and maybe they will feel comfortable to ban the Circuit. Maybe they didn't feel comfortable banning the Circuit on the first side. But I would still like to see the Circuit ban. Leave open the Guan if you have to. Benji played well on the Nike. He played well on the Kakolan. I don't think banning out the Guan was a big enough thing. And then you're obviously forced to ban out the Emoji too. So they're left with 1 ban, and I hope they use it on Circuit.
Yeah, it's that dynamic that you really have to deal with, which is the almost the SSG effect, I would argue, right? Like, Guan actually being banned by Radiance here as opposed to SSG. But, you have to ban this Afro. You have to ban this Erlong. You have to later potentially ban something like that Hera that's come through. The Kabraken's been banned from them as well, though maybe not so much anymore after that last game. It feels like SSG were the ones that, at least in my mind, touted as this team impossible to ban against, and right now that's Radiance. And unfortunately, I think for anyone who wanted to see any adaptation from it, adapting will happily be able to get, I would assume, his Circuit back, because that's Raw that's been banned out once again by SSG.
Yeah, I mean, this is just what Radiance wants. They just want that Circuit. They've shown that they're willing to first pick it on second side, so why not first pick it on the first side? I think the big thing now is SSG gets 2 picks, and since they know Radiance is going to take that Circuit, so maybe they go the Kabraken's open, the Ares is open, Nike's open. There's a couple picks that are open that they can play, but I just don't know if anything's good enough to be even with that Circuit.
I know it's only from this weekend, but anytime I see an 86% win rate down there for anybody, I think for a while there, Matarasu was up there in Phase 2. It's just a little nerve-wracking coming through, and Circuit is going to hold that one. But this will be the first game, all set, that we haven't seen Cyclone spin on this Cupid. Goes over now to Vote, something that is, I would maybe even argue, a signature pick for him as well. Granted, considering all of the Hunters played pretty much 2 picks all phase, maybe with a sprinkling of a Hachi like Bear likes to use, a little Apollo and Scotty at the end as well. It feels like this Cupid has been big, but that does mean that he can go to that second pick we've been talking about, this Heimdall. How do you like that matchup between the 2 Hunters here?
I think it's just a fine matchup for Cupid. Cupid's just looking to ult to get out either the beads or the ult from the enemy ADC, and Heim's going to have to beads to 3 out, or he's going to have to ult out. I just like taking away the Cupid. Cyclone has shown that now he favors the Cupid over the Heim. You might as well take it away. Give yourself a little bit of healing, a little bit of safety in lane, and a little bit of CC with the Heart Bomb.
Well, Kabraken locked in, but this time on Radiance's side. SSG are going to have to deal with that. And even though when Spacestation pick it up, it's a Cherio pick, when Radiance pick it up, it's an Aurora pick. So duo lane, Kabraken, Heimdall, maybe trying to make up for some of the pressure that Cupid, I guess, could give onto the Heimdall himself, but I don't know how I like that early game duo lane. We'll have to see, I guess, what Raffer decides to lock in, because that does impact a lot, as we saw from that Geb last time. Susano locked in here. For your jungle, pretty standard. I mean, where does he fit? Where are his matchups good, especially into what Radiance have now?
He just chases Circuit well. If Circuit ever tries to just leap in, get out, and move around quickly, Susano can just chase her with his 3. He has the movement and the ability to get in and get out. I think they just want Cherry on a hyper carry god now. He played the Amma that didn't work out too well. He played the Kabraken, which was not very good either. So maybe they're just trying to give him an actual assassin, something that he can get in, get out safely, and just execute someone. And I like the Cabrakan pick a lot from Radiance just because it's a good pick into Cupid. You lock the Cupid down, you're slow immune, you just become really tanky because Cupid's just trying to lock down and kill one person. So the Cabrakan pick is really nice there.
Awesome. So he can maintain over the Cupid overall, maybe give Heimdall that pressure that is necessary to try and turn some of that around. And then late game, just really, really good isolation onto the back line. I'm actually really excited to see this. You had said hyper carry there for Cherio, 2 words that you really don't want to hear. I mean, for a long time, people in chat, the casters, everybody has been kind of discussing who is the better jungler and who's the best jungler in the league. At the end of Phase 2, the conversation was between Sam and Cherio. Sam didn't really like his own performance. I saw a tweet from him earlier today, and we can all admit maybe wasn't exactly the best few games we've seen out of him, even though they find the win. Same thing here for Cherio. Maybe looking to turn it around. The one guy who's got a pentakill all year in Season 7. They ban out the Discordia, as well as the Kukulkan. Chang'e and Hera banned out on the other side. 2 picks SSG have picked up. But it's going to be the Kuzenbo. A little bit of pressure right back into the duo lane here for SSG, with the Agni on the other side for BMT.
Radiance has just found 2 to 3 gods for every role that they like, and they're just sticking with them. They played the Agni now, second time. Wukong is nothing surprising for Benji. They had the Cabrakan, the Heim, the Serket. This is just the comp that Radiance wants every time, and they will pick it every time. You can only ban away 1, maybe 2 gods from each role, and Radiance has enough gods in each role that you cannot ban them out. So Radiance is just going to be really hard to ban against and play against for the rest of the playoffs.
It's the same conversation that it's weird because we started talking about SSG that way. I mean, that's what we were talking about, what, an hour ago, almost an hour and a half ago, and now it's Radiance that have kind of turned the tables around. Morgan locked in as the very last one here, more than likely for Dardes there in the mid lane. A lot of interesting transformation targets that can come through in this game, but what would you expect when you're coming through? Setup, Wukong, Nike, or are you going for someone that can kill like your Cupid or your Heimdall?
I think it usually just feels better turning into a tank or someone that's slippery and can get away. So I expect like a Wukong, a Serket, a Nike, maybe even a Kuzenbo because the Kuzenbo is really strong also. The Morgan pick just fits really well also just because it's hard to dive the Morgan. This basically just means Vote's just going to be fodder for the enemy team because Serket's going to be diving him, Wukong's going to be diving him, Cabrakan's going to be diving him. So I just expect the Dardes is going to kind of be the Dardes and Cherry are going to be the pieces that SSG need to win this game.
The ones that need to fall into place here, too, right? Dardes didn't have necessarily a bad game 1, didn't really have a bad game 2, but didn't have a great game 2 either. Cherio has to fall into place here, or else it's do or die right now for SSG, right? If you lose this one, you are not only knocked out, but I believe you start to question whether or not you move forward to Worlds itself. Points matter at this point. Placing matters at this point. Finals not only give you that trip towards the first seed of Worlds, but also giving you the chance to potentially be even second seed and skip over all of those qualifiers, get right into the semifinals. So a nice little prize that comes into your bank as well on top of that. Is this the kind of draft that can do this for SSG? Can they dig their heels in here and fight back?
I like their draft a lot, but Radiance is playing so well. I don't know if it matters what SSG plays. I think it's up to Radiance to make mistakes for SSG to have a chance.
They haven't been making a lot of them, have they, Bobby? So there's a lot of chances for SSG to get knocked out here, but just as many for them to dig their heels in and fight back. We'll have to find out if they can do it here in game number 3.
Thank you once again on the desk there, Gormizer, and inbound into game 3 we go with me, Mifflin, and of course Doug, spectating out there with the best of them. And here in this game, Radiance perhaps going to try to show Cheerio what Cabrakan can look like when you're not getting hardcore bullied by an Ares. How do you like the 2 comps here? Sound like Bobby may be leaning a bit towards SSG's draft. It's just that Radiance is playing too well right now.
I think that this is an SSG draft that makes sense. Nika should be able to hold his own in solo. The duo lane can fight in, if even be favored, and find pressure in of itself. Kuzenbo and Cupid, one of the best kill lanes that SMITE has to offer. And SSG brought some late game win condition inside of the Morrigan. Cherio's just there to facilitate and try to make it easier to transition to that point of the match. But Radiance, on the other hand, brings a draft that is very reminiscent of what we saw in the last 2 games. The ability to find these picks, to find anyone isolated in the jungle and instantly blow them up. I think that, again, Bobby kind of hits on a hint of truth there, that it's up to Radiance to kind of play it wrong, or if SSG are able to adapt on the field to the play style that Radiance have been bringing this weekend. It's not going to be easy, but this is the first time this set where I feel like SSG has found themselves a draft that can absolutely work.
I mean, it's a great point, right? I mean, if you're SSG, you have to find a way to wipe that second game from your memory, because it's not as if Radiance came into that game and just played better than you. I mean, you did have the tools to get it done in game 2, right? Now that you're properly equipped here in this third game, you can start to build yourself some momentum. I mean, you and I both said it coming out of that last game, right? That doesn't mean anything. SSG could easily reverse sweep Radiance. Easily is the wrong word, but what I mean is it's certainly possible, right? It is not going to be easy, but it's certainly something that SSG are capable of.
It is, but the mental drain of aggressive dash in from BMT uses the beads early on to avoid a stun from Dardes there. That's good poke, but now he's open to a kill himself. He's going to play a lot safer around that dash in the future. But we haven't talked about the mental damage, the draining factor of knowing that if you drop a single game on your journey, if you want to reverse sweep, you're just out of it. Single elimination, game point, SSG has a lot that they're going to have to climb through here.
And it's a lot on the line. Gore did a great job of breaking it down there on the desk. You could potentially get first seed from winning this tournament outright. If you get enough points from it, even if you don't win, you get second, you get that bye into Worlds, and things become so much easier for your path, right? There's less chance of, as you mentioned, some hot team is the scariest thing you could run into, right? If Obey start popping off on Worlds, you don't want to play them. And they will, you're right, they have a chance to. E-United could, any of those teams could. The SCT team could pop off, right? And you want to avoid all that if possible, and that's what is on the line at this tournament. That's what Radiance is looking like they've got a great shot to do if they can keep doing what they've done in games 1 and 2.
And they've got the tools to do it again, adapting on this circuit. I'm surprised that Spacestation hasn't been willing to allocate a ban towards it, because I think this is Adapting's best character, full stop. It personifies his playstyle, and he's made a really good showing of it in this set in particular. Hasn't been forced into going to any other pick as of yet. What is he going to fall back to if they decide to ban out the circuit? The Daji, the Nemesis comes to mind. I don't think it facilitates that exact same role that Radiance has been benefiting from. So I'm surprised that Spacestation aren't willing to make that adjustment, whereas Spacestation, on the other hand, got target banned the exact same way for the last 6 months. Dardes eating up Aphrodite and Hera bans, and it seems like somehow, finally, during the playoffs, Radiance figured out, okay, this is exactly how you beat what they have left.
Good blink there from Benji. He was certainly in some trouble there from Cheerio, but avoids it well. That was the early gank in duo, or solo, excuse me, as Cheerio already getting to be more active this game, right? Did you see Cheerio make any affirmative offensive decisions in game 2? Because I don't think my man had an opportunity. At least this time, he knows where he can go to try and look for some pressure, just that Benji avoids it.
Yeah, I think Cheerio's easiest gank lane is likely going to be through the mid. If he ever catches Agni with his dash down, that should be pretty easy to follow up on from Dardes, a pull from Susano into a knockup, or even rotating into this duo lane. He's going to have some interesting interactions. Heimdall is going to be knockup immune, so that ultimate's going to be a lot harder to find value off of for Cheerio. So I think Radiance have done a good job of creating some lanes where he has some safety, where it makes it a lot harder for Cheerio to decide where he wants to gank. But that's a hard decision that all junglers have to contend with. I want to see Cherry trying to get involved as early as possible. Don't let Radiance set the pace. Play that pick play style that they have been.
And he knows when he's got pressure like he does over there in solo. Backs right in front of Nika there and takes his trip back to base. Has the Blink Relic though, so he'll be making his way back in slowly. Same for Nika. Check it in mid. Tings ticked over to level 6, I believe, a little bit ahead of Dardes. Nothing crazy here at this point or anything like that, but Tings is doing a good job of farming there in mid. And I think that's a good point, Myth. Tings has quietly played really, really well here for this Radiant squad, time in and time out. I mean, he's playing Discordia and Agni. I mean, I don't consider those top-tier mages right now, and at least for the Discordia, he's made it look good.
Listen up, man. Tings is the most slept-on mid laner in the entire league. He is quietly becoming one of the best that we have. He's kind of really adjusted himself, and I think it has something to do with his past, where he was more of this role-play guy, where he wanted to just kind of show up, make sure he doesn't feed. But now on Radiance, especially in recent months, he's really stepped up for his team and become one of the mainstay forces, the reason that Radiance has been winning so many of his matches. Consistent damage output, a deep god pool, understanding of exactly what he needs to do in every individual draft that Radiance is able to acquire. I think that this man deserves a lot more respect than he's garnered.
You're right. I think it's so easy to kind of fall into a trap when you're in a team with Adapting and Benji and Aurora and Cyclone Spin of of maybe thinking you can coast a little bit. As long as you don't mess it up, those guys can win, right? But I think Tings is, if that was ever the case, I obviously don't know, I'm projecting a bit, but if that was it, he's outgrown it for sure, right? And he's come into his own in this middle lane now, a threat in his own right, and Radiance now a 5-pronged attack. Goes to one of the only teams at SSG, I think, that have made it quite to that level yet, and Radiance right there with them, perhaps, if they can find a way to win this set. Adapting getting aggressive, though, on Cheerio. Last breath pulls him in. Cobra's Kiss there as well, and Adapting finds the first blood. He's in trouble now, though. Ambush gets him out of there. Dardes should be able to get him with the ultimate and does dunk down. That means the transformation from this Morgan will bear fruit, as Aurora now trapped as well. He's stuck with the body blocks. What a play! But Aurora somehow makes it out of there. Sentinel Zeus for the slows. Not enough for the kill, and that's 1 for 1, but first blood going to Radiance.
The reaction from Adapting there, daring Cheerio to teleport to that, and the second he does, the follow-up from Big Man Tings, the ultimate from Sirket, all turns it around into an easy kill. Unfortunately for Radiance, their sole laner elected to try and push out the wave a little bit more and establish himself a lead. He does proxy and find some jungle pressure, and with blue buff spawning, if Radiance are able to rotate over, this might be a swing in their favor.
This is huge, though, right? Benji's got to steal some of this farm away to make up for the fact that Nika had presence in that mid fight. And he does indeed strip some farm away, make it out of there safely, and he'll even be here to split this blue buff with Adapting. So in the end, it's a bit hard, I think, to keep track of it there in your mind, but Benji does enough to make that a worthwhile trade for them, especially with Radiance having gotten that first blood off that great play there from Adapting. But this is what is scary. When Adapting plays like he's playing on this Sirket, when he gets to be active and not just playing that cleanup man that we see him do so often, this is when Radiance are at their strongest.
Oh, Aurora! And look at him go!
My man blinks underneath the mid-tier 1 tower. Does manage to survive it, though I think maybe a little bit out of pocket from him. Cheerio blinks in for the return kill, and yeah, that's a bit of a gift that Aurora just gave them, but he was looking to get aggressive.
Yeah, Aurora's vibing at this point. My man's just happy to be there. Aggressive play is what we like to see from him, but maybe a little bit overzealous. There's not really anyone in follow-up range, even if he does find the CC. But I understand the mentality. He wanted to lock down Dardes while those beats were still down, and he's only got 40 seconds left on it. That might have been the last opportunity he had to find a punish.
Oh, no ultimate for Benji, so he is in trouble. Now he's been slowed. This is a kill every day of the week. Dardes gets it, and now Benji biting off more than he can chew. And I don't think this is always true, Myth, but it's true now. SSG needed some mistakes from Radiance, and I think Radiance have now gifted them 2 in a row.
But it's only amounted to evening up the game. Now about 300 gold in favor of SSG. XP finally leans back in favor of Nika, despite Benji really not rotating out at all, and Nika being in every single team fight for SSG. Finally, he's able to find himself a lead over there, but that trade potential in the soul lane should still favor Benji because the sustain that Soul Leader affords him. Adapting decides to pick up the Rune Forge, an interesting adaptation of the build to help him out with survivability and lockdown going forward. I think that Radiance have made a couple mistakes, but they've been calculated. SSG really haven't been able to do anything with these small trips. They can't pick up the Gold Free, the Pyromancer, anything along those lines. It's calculated opportunity cost from Radiance. I think it's fine that they go ahead and fall down there.
A bit of trouble for Aurora in the jungle. He's been locked down. The watery grave there as well. And yet another spill. Kabrakan has struggled this set, but trades his life for a kill onto Cheerio. That's worth it every day of the week. And the ultimate coming out from that Susano, I believe that was Dardes transformed, does not quite hit home. No, Dardes into the Wukong. Cheerio's ultimate posthumously cannot find a home, and Dardes turning into the Wukong can't find much of one either. So in the end there, Myth, that ends up being worth it. They got a lot of ultimates out from SSG and support for jungle.
Yeah, we'll take that trade every single day of the week. Cherry's starting to fall behind now, 1 level down in his opposition. Rapper steps up a little bit too far. If Adapting does find that taunt there, might have been enough for the rest of his team to follow up on that. BMT was right behind him, so I like this playstyle. And this is Adapting looking confident, isn't it? Jumping in aggressively, constantly in these fights, dashing through the entirety of the enemy team in that last engagement to make sure that the poison spreads. I think this Sirket is a huge issue. I'm not going to let him have it ever again if I'm playing against him.
SSG, if you can win this game, take note of it in future games, and if not, then I'm hoping Ghost is writing it down, because Adapting looks like a different player, like the old Adapting on this circuit. Not to say that Adapting's not been contributing with this new playstyle for him, but it has been different, right? And this is a bit more like what we used to see, where he's out here setting the pace, and it's been tough for SSG to deal with it here so far. And this Runeforged, we haven't talked about it. I mean, you brought it up there, obviously, but it doesn't make so much sense on this circuit. Sledge is good too, obviously, but I think this is going to enable that pick style even more.
It really will. Anyone who gets CC'd around Adapting is going to get shredded away instantly, and that additional survivability. If he wants to, he could even elect to pick up a Sledge in conjunction with it, but instead it looks like it is likely going to be the Void Shield picked up next by Adapting. And it's just this tanky jungle style, this tanky circuit that is really reminiscent of what we used to see back in Season 4, allows Adapting to really play that initiator role. It allows him to really make use of this more aggressive style. He doesn't have to be concerned about being one of the first people into these engagements, because he has so much survivability, mobility, damage potential from the true damage on his ultimate. Everyone on Spacestation has to be wary about when they want to engage on him or when he's around, because nobody really has the one-shot potential except for Dardes, and at this point in the game, not even Dardes, not yet.
It's a great performance here so far from Adapting, and it's reminiscent of when Suket was that top pick, top man, Hun. Right now, SSG got to find a way to deal with it here in 2020, or else their chances at that first overall seed are out of the window. I think likely their chances at the second seed are out of the window too. Radiance, I think that team with the next amount of points there behind Ghost is... There's the engage from Adapting again. Dardes is the target, but Dardes turns into the Wukong for all of that safety. And that Changeling ultimate makes Dardes a really difficult target for Adapting, Myth. I mean, if he turns into Wukong, you are not killing him.
And it also, the timing of that Changeling ultimate made it so that Circuit's ultimate got 0 value. It actually didn't connect with Dardes. There's a moment, almost like when you blink in space, where you're just intangible once you transform on the Morrigan. So it eats up Adapting's cooldown, doesn't even apply the anti-heal, so Dardes is able to benefit from the heal himself from the Sun Wukong ultimate, not to mention just the raw survivability that you brought up earlier. But that's an interesting play. If Dardes is able to do that consistently, and that's not easy to do, it's going to make Adapting's job nigh impossible to shut down the Morrigan.
We've given a lot of credit over to Adapting and Tings and how well Radiance have played, but Dardes is being Dardes right now, isn't he? 3-0-1, a part of all 4 of these kills so far. Same for Cheerio, he's been right there with him despite the deaths. He's been setting up for the squad. And if SSG can keep this kind of play out of their mid-jungle, then I think they've certainly got a chance in this one, right, Myth? I mean, so often, that is what SSG rely on, is Dardes and Cheerio and Rapper giving time for Nika and Vote to make their way in. And right now, it looks like they're doing it.
Yeah, this pace is definitely benefiting SSG, especially after the last game. This is exactly what you need. Get some time to get your feet under you, get ready for that team fight phase, make sure everyone's staying even or even establishing leads, and that's exactly what's happening. But we're rapidly approaching a point where neutral objectives are going to get started up, and Radiance first was on the scene. Pyromancer going to go their way.
Wow, and Tings using the bombs for DPS there, committing all 3 to burn down an objective. A Cyclone Spin. Can't believe I thought he was in trouble, not when he has the ultimate. We talked about it earlier. Snoop was mentioning the safety of Hachiman and Jingwei, but Heimdall's there as SSG are trying to commit for a red buff invade, but now they're stuck in no man's land. No commit, though, from SSG, or rather from Radiant, so SSG make it out of there. But, man, I think they were close to being in a bit of trouble there.
They are. They're in no man's land, as you said, but I think that SSG have got a pretty decent lead here. They maintain the majority of their ultimates as Sans Fields of Love, so their team fight potential is good. Maybe they're springing the trap.
Looks like they want to lock down Aurora, a little bit of payback, but it does not work. Adapting moves in, gets down that last breath, but has to retreat and can't get far enough from Cheerio. My man followed him, and he got the kill, so that's Cheerio's first time living through a team fight. Maybe I spoke too soon. Tectonic shift, not quite enough damage there from Aurora. And now Aurora's in an awful spot. Dardes gets the second kill of this engagement. And SSG are right back into this game.
Cyclone Spin rotates into the team, tries to find Dardes, can't get the autos, finally picks up the kill.
But Nika hunting down big man Tings underneath the mid-tier 1 finds that kill. And SSG get the 3-for-1. You said it, Myth. SSG have the fight potential. They put it on display there.
They did. They start that attack just W-keying into the entirety of Radiance, and Radiance splits off into two distinct groups. Once the fight is split, Cyclone Spin was never really able to safely re-engage while his team was still alive. Eventually, he was able to rotate in and pick up a cleanup kill onto Dardes, but too little too late. Space Station had already won the engagement cleanly, but not cleanly enough to pick themselves up a Gold Fury. Radiance holding on just a little bit. It's not the biggest disparity that we've ever seen, only about 600-700 gold separating these two teams, but now we're starting to see what SSG is capable of doing once they're coming to these team fights from even.
And see how much harder adapting his life is when SSG are grouped up like that. I mean, he engaged at the start of that fight, the same as he's done all game long, but there were like 3 SSG members around him. He had to retreat, didn't get to do anything else in that fight, and Cheerio hunted him down as well. He got that kill right at the beginning of that fight, and it was so critical when Aurora and Adapting, who've been the engager Radiance this fight, are struggling. It's going to make things a lot easier for SSG.
It should. Look at Aurora's build. It looks like he might be going into a Stone of Gaia right now so that he can stick around in these team fights a lot longer. If Rapper uses the Watery Grave like he did last time to disengage the fight and make sure that Aurora can't find a nice cage, now all of a sudden Aurora's going to have so much more survivability. That passive going to get proc instantly, help him out in those situations. So now Rapper has to make a hard decision. Do I want to address the initial engage from Aurora or wait it out a little bit longer, wait for Adapting to dive into the backline, or even Benji and save Watery Grave for that? So that's an interesting pivot from Radiance's support inside of the build, which should make Rapper's life a lot harder.
It's going to, but we gotta start thinking about what these fights are gonna look like once Cyclone Spin gets in there. They're gonna be able to keep track of this Morgan a lot easier. Cyclone Spin's damage is on its way, right? The fail not followed by this Atalanta's bow, and won't be able to get knocked up, as you covered earlier. His interactions with that Susano and Rapper as well. I mean, both of these teams want their hunters to get involved, right? And Vote's done a bit of that with 3 assists, but Cyclone Spin's got some great potential for what he can provide.
And Cyclone Spin's going to be rotating in with a lot of damage at this point. If anyone burns beads, all of a sudden they're going to take a trip to Niflheim. That's not exactly where you want to be when Gold Fury's on the line either. And the follow-up potential from Radiance, the CC lockdown, the 72 transformations from Sun Wukong, the multiple stuns from Aurora, even the taunt from Adapting. If anyone is locked down by Cyclone Spin's ultimate, the follow-up should just be enough off a CC to find a kill, regardless of who it is. It could be Rapper, it could be Nika, it doesn't really matter. That's how much CC this Radiance draft has.
And think about how much Agni wants some items, right? This Chronos pendant for Tings is huge. When he gets these bombs off frequently, when it feels like he has 2 or 3 bombs in every fight, Agni can be so tough to deal with. He can engage with a ranged bomb stun at times, so I like Tings' potential here as well, but this fight's so critical for both teams. SSG can cement their lead here with a big win, or Radiance can grab control as well. The Oracle Vision does go over to SSG, but everyone's got their relics here for this one. Everyone's got their ultimates. This might be our first big 5-on-5.
Watch Dardes in this next engagement. It's going to be up to him to find his way into the back line, but up against Radiance's draft, easier said than done. The Gallarhorn can spot him out. The dot from Agni makes it impossible to stealth. Even if Aurora is standing in the middle of the Gold Fury pit tremoring, all of a sudden Dardes is locked down. He can't stealth through that either. It's going to be very hard for him to find his way to these priority targets.
Rapper starts the fight off looking for Aurora. There's the Watery Grave, but the Stone of Gaia heals him for more than he took. Stun is the response, but really, Rapper's committed Blink and his ult. Tiger Stun from Benji. The bombs are the follow-up. Aurora to the backline with the Tectonic Shift to cut off the fight, but Boat's Fields of Love is good, and look how low Adapting is. He can no longer make his way to the backline. There's too much damage, and Radiance lose their jungler right at the start of this fight. And I think SSG recognized the weakness, pushing forward into that bomb damage. 2-man knocked up from Nika, but SSG ready to head back towards the Fury.
And Dardes is playing so well around all this CC, and the re-engage from Radiance, interesting.
Maybe a little bit too much here from the Radiance Force. Aurora dies right away, ends up losing Cyclone Spin as well, and SSG have turned this game around. Now Big Man Tings has to run Benji as well, but how far can he go? Bird form gets him out of there. Yes, SSG lost Cheerio, but they can burn this Gold Fury easily and start to cement themselves a lead.
Reinitiate whenever they want. They can heal up through the Cupid heals as well. We saw that fight. Radiance, almost stubbornness, is trying to initiate the exact same way they have been every single time. Adapting, goes in, tries to find an ultimate or a taunt to set up for the rest of his team. But now the damage output from Space Station is too high. It doesn't matter that he's got this survivable build with Runeforge and Void. Darda's damage alone is enough to make sure that Adapting can't go through there safely. It looks like he might be moving to the Erendite next instead of Magic Defense, so Dardas is going to remain that huge threat to him as well. I think, if anything, Radiance needs to shift up how they initiate these fights. Maybe send Benji in first, or Aurora, try and burn through some of the defensive capabilities of Space Station, and then re-engage slowly. Because if they keep taking these ranged poke wars, it seems like Space Station are just going to win out every time.
It's starting to look that way, isn't it? SSG with some signs of life. Benji has his Somersault Cloud, so he makes his way out of there. Big knock-up from Mika, but Benji is tanky. They commit to Sentinel of Zeus. They want this kill onto Benji. He doesn't have 72 transformations, so Dardes gets the kill. That is huge, and SSG know what they're doing. They're taking that right to the bank, and it's Fire Giant, the Federal Credit Unit of Fire Giant. I don't know how to land that one, as the Fire Giant is below half HP. Aurora and Adapting are nearby, but they can't steal it on their own. Fire Giant low, Adapting leaps in, but SSG confirm it. Adapting is food, and SSG have the 5v3 advantage.
Yeah, and Aurora's feeling the full brunt of that. He's gonna fall for free. The chase is on. Nika going in deep. That's Dardes actually, Changeling ultimate, trying to find Big Man Tings in the back. He's completely alone, so that one's gonna fizzle out. But now Fire Giant, 5 members, towers, gonna fall easily. And Space Station, no, they don't even need to group up as 5. Easy to split push this one. 3-2 split. So much gold left on the map. Radiance, man. We see it there. Adapting goes for the hero play to try and steal away the Fire Giant. There's no reason for Aurora to be there. There's no way Aurora impacts that except for losing his life on the tail end, which means there's no defense potential from Radiance. Space Station blows this one wide open.
What a big turnaround here from SSG. We said it. These SSG boys have a chance to turn this set around, and right now, they're absolutely doing it. This Pyromancer will add to their lead. They've exposed the mid and right Phoenixes and still has some more gold to collect over in that left lane as well here, Mifflin. They're in an excellent position to close this one out, and their ability to neutralize Adapting. He's died 3 times in a row, essentially having no impact at the starts of these fights. The fact that Aurora can't seem to do a whole lot with this Cabrakan either. At this point, both teams will have failed to impress me with the Cabrakan, so maybe leave it on the wayside.
Yeah, Aurora maybe trying to BM a little bit. This is what Cabrakan's supposed to look like. Wait, no, my bad, never mind, it's not working out here. But interesting strategy from Radiance. They're trying to match the push here, trying to take back what they can. I think it's the right call, knowing that they can't really defend all on their own. If it's left up to a true 5-on-5 defense, I think I favor Space Station just about every single time. So they're trying their best to split the map and slow down the push. Unfortunately, 2 members of the Space Station are all it's going to take to make Radiance think twice of it. They're going to have to leave that tier 2 alone on the right-hand side.
Plus, they've got Benji kind of isolated here in the jungle. Perhaps, though, Dardas has lost track of him. Either that or given up the chase, and Benji should be able to find the back. So we'll have our 5-on-5 under the Phoenix at the very least. And Space Station Myth, I know with the Morgan, maybe not always the best seeds, but they have such a lead here at this point.
Look, if Radiance wants to defend, they're going to need a hero-style play from Cyclone. He's got crit in the build, so if he's able to somehow make contact with Dardes, Cherio, or Vote, that's one way in. Big Man Tings is going to have to come up in a big way. He's the sole source of AoE magic damage, so he's going to have to not only keep the wave out, but keep Space Station poked as they work their way in. Whereas Space Station, their only job at this point is to create space. Dardes and Vote should be able to instantly blow up these Phoenixes. If they're allowed in, I think these Phoenixes don't stand a chance. Radiance might have to take the fight on the line.
It's Raffer that moves in first. He forces the dash out from Big Man Tings. It is a 4-1 split with Dardes back in mid, but a great wall has locked in Raffer, and the Phoenix gets the last shot. Tings getting credit for it, and one more taking a trip to Muspelheim on a Cyclone spin, manages to live. The defense is finally showing up here from Radiant, but it's still not enough. The remaining members of SSG burn down the left side Phoenix, but can Radiant find the punish? Double stun onto Dardes, who turned into the Nike for a second health bar. Adapting makes his way out of there, and SSG get the Phoenix they were looking for.
A small win, but they're not out of it just yet. Nika stunned out. The follow-up's there from Radiance, but it's a slow roll. Not enough DPS. If they chase too far, they might lose their lives.
Gotta make sure they're being careful about this, but they should at least get Nika. Tings is the one with the bombs that claims his life. And what a team fight from Radiance. Aurora punishing the over-engage there from Rapper. Meanwhile, Cheerio, though, going to go to this minion wave and push it up. I wonder if this is to suck Radiance back in and force them to defend the Phoenix, but they do not bite. They stick onto the Primal Fury itself. Dardes is nearby. They're worried about Cheerio wrapping underneath. Radiance have to be so careful here as SSG steal it away. Dardes, with that Dark Omen, strips it away.
Can't let those happen to you, man. Dark Omen's not a very hard-hitting ability. BMT drops the ball a little bit on that Primal Fury, but it's a nice defense from Radiance nonetheless. Able to stop it at 1 Phoenix is nothing to scoff at, and Fire Giant respawning in 30 seconds means that Radiance has enough time to push up this wave as far as they can, potentially all the way up to the tier 1, and then regroup around Fire and try and take the fight there. But I don't like their odds, Finch. Space Station looks dominant in every single fight inside the jungle.
Yeah, fortunately, Radiance got 1 kill. They got Rapper and Nika, right? The front line for SSG died for a Phoenix. A trade I think they're happy to take at this point here, Mifflin. And I know you said maybe Radiance can regroup and come to Fire, but I don't know. Maybe they got to try and defend in the Phoenix again. If they die in the jungle, if they get 3-man wiped, I think the game is just over.
I mean, I agree, but I think if Space Station picks up a Fire Giant here, it's so much easier to siege a mid Phoenix. It's so much easier, especially when that left Phoenix is down. Yeah, Radiance has to move up. If not for the fight, at least make it a steal attempt. If one member goes down to trying to steal, you've got the upshot of potentially you take away the Fire Giant. It's going to stifle SSG's ability to push, and losing 1 life is not too bad, especially if it's not Agni. BMT is the only one who has to stay alive if they want any chance of defending the Titan.
The good news is that Big Man Tings absolutely swing. Soul Reaver Karen's coin finished with that Magus working its magic as well. And Radiance have a ton of damage from their mid laner. They've got to remember, though, there's fire minions pouring down this left lane. They pushed it up about to the tier 1 earlier, but that is done, and SSG are biding their time. Dardes wanted to be the first one in, but Benji knew where he was. Cudgel's great to deny the push. Looks like Radiance are giving up on their positioning for now. They sent Cyclone Spin back.
That's a huge loss here. I think Radiance essentially give up the ability to take this fight, but adapting, hovering so close, we might see a repeat of the last Fire Giant and another steal attempt.
Dardes does get the stun. Adapting gets his last breath to make it out of there. SSG secure the fire, and now Aurora and Benji are stuck in this middle ground between contesting and not. They're at the very least going to lose Aurora. Everyone else are going to have to defend this Phoenix 4v5 Myth. I don't like that in between that Radiance took.
Yeah, it just felt like they were hesitant, right? Do we want to defend? Do we want to try for a steal? Do we want to back up and try and push out this left side so we can actually defend on the right side, Phoenix? And they don't make a solid enough decision that they kind of lose out on all fronts. That left wave is pushing up very quickly, and now a 4v5 on the Phoenix, not going to favor the team that's already, what, 12,000 gold down and doesn't have Fire Giants? SSG primed and ready.
It's a tremendous deficit for him. Nika the first one in. Sentinel Zeus does not land. Adapting. No, that's Benji who went for the dive and got absolutely blown up. Cyclone Spin does manage to lock down Nika, but lock him down for what? Right side Phoenix melts. There is no follow-up. And now Radiance are clinging to their base's life. Left side Phoenix about to be melted by fire minions. The rest of SSG threatening the mid Phoenix, and Radiance struggling for an answer. But there's the damage from BMT. Rapper gets blown up. Nika has to disengage, and Radiance clinging to life, but not if they lose Adapting, and Boat has too much damage.
Yeah, Big Man Tings is the man to be worried about. We see that damage output right there. If Space Station is able to take him down, the Titan won't be far behind him.
Cyclone Spin is low. He's got the crit damage and it's rearing its head, but he cannot stick around for longer. Roar gets melted. 4 members of SSG Strong are looking to pour into the Titan room and give us a game 4. How can Tings and Cyclone Spin hold on alone? There's too many minion waves. There's too much strength from this SSG squad as Dardes is the first one in. Benji is back up though. Dardes transforms into the Nike and the Titan is down to half HP. It's down below a quarter and SSG keep themselves alive. We're going to game 4.
Yo, better late than never. Space Station looking like they're back to their prime here, but they've got a steep hill to climb. They're going to have to win 2 more straight if they want to meet Ghost Gaming in the finals. That's not an easy task, especially against a Radiance that is playing as hot as they are.
Yeah, and you got to remember that Ghost kind of had SSG's number all phase long, right? So are they even running in anything all that great? It's a tough path here for SSG to take. They got to get 2 in a row. And hopefully, if they make it, find a way to beat Ghost. Great for them to bounce back, though. A really impressive game considering how tough Game 2 was for them. Do SSG have more in the tank? We'll find out after the break.
Well, they aren't going to go down, at least not without a fight here. Game number 3 goes towards SSG there. A lot of rights on their side inbound, a lot of wrongs maybe on the side of Radiance. You had framed it perfectly. The only way SSG maybe win Game 3 is if Radiance start making mistakes, and it felt like there were plenty there. I believe it was 1-7 at the end on that Bracken, very much worth mentioning. Did not have, well, actually had pretty much the same performance Terrio had on it, even though it was support this time around. Didn't quite click. It's the Dardes show, realistically, on the other side. Nika as well. I think this Nike really was the driving force for SSG.
Yeah, just the Nike and Morgan combo is just insane. They only had 1 Sunder, so if they wanted to just focus one and burn one down, the other one would just be left to free cast. And you could kind of tell, I expected at Game 1, when they picked the Morgan into the Circuit, that Adapting just wouldn't be able to kill him because he would just transform into Nike, but this game, he just couldn't kill the Morgan, and the Morgan would just transform and just not die, and you could tell that Adapting was struggling because he couldn't kill that mage.
Yeah, this time around, Adapting, we've been talking about him as a kind of a big playmaker setup for Radiance all weekend so far. This game was not quite that way. Every time he went in, he felt like he was the first one to get burned down. Sometimes it was Aurora that got burned down in his stead. But either way, it didn't really go well for either of them. And you had highlighted it. Not only was the turn and burn just really good for SSG, but Adapting as Circuit, jumping into this Cupid specifically was where you had highlighted to me where the biggest problem was. You jump in, all of a sudden Fields of Love cripples you, and you just can't get out of there.
Yeah, I think this Cupid is just going to be the biggest pick for this 4th game. So far, the Cupid is 3-0 in this set. I don't know what it is the rest of the week, but Cupid just seems to be too much of a problem to dive. Adapting has too hard of a time diving through that cripple. Serket is just too reliant on her mobility that she just cannot live through that. And I think when Cyclone gets it, it's impossible to dive Cyclone and whoever his mage is. So I think this Cupid will be a big factor for this last game, or this next game.
I'll tell you, 3-0 through this set, as you had highlighted, and he's been doing pretty well so far outside of that, winning every single one of his games he's made it through. So far, feeling pretty solid, I think, if you lock in Cupid. And like you said, more than likely the one who can win if you get him. And we were even talking about that. We were looking at it and talking about the draft phase, and we were like, you know, Serket, like, it's been really kind to adapting so far, but no one else is really picking her, and as long as you get her in your top 3, there's a good chance she's not going to get banned away from you, and so you could maybe shift if you were first pick. You go back to game 3, then maybe you grab that Cupid first instead, but we'll have to see what they do here. I think you had even mentioned to me that you'd prefer to see them take second pick. We'll see what they do as we go into picks and bans, and lo and behold, they're actually right back over on that side, making sure that they're going to be first pick. I mean, would you still like to see the Cupid shift and have them grab that first?
Yeah, I think just Cupid's just too valuable right now. And realistically, if you do pick the Cupid, SSG picks the Serket away. How practiced is SSG going to be on that Serket? Not as much as adapting is on that Serket. So SSG's now going to have to weigh that, say, are we wanting to pick that Serket even though we don't have a ton of practice on it, or should we just give it to adapting?
Well, so far along Shin, Persephone, same old story that we've seen pretty much game in and game out. SSG are where my eyes go to. The bans, I think, on Radiance's side are important, but realistically, what SSG adapt to for this one, because, yeah, they win that one. They win it pretty convincingly, but don't forget their backs are still against the wall here. They're the ones facing elimination if Radiance get one more win. They have to win 2 more in a row. Granted, hey, at that point, it's just a regular season game, right? It's a best of 3 where you just aren't allowed to lose one of the games, something that SSG were pretty dominant with throughout Phase 2, so hopefully they can bring it for us today just to give us a good set. I don't really care who wins in Game 5. I'd just like to get there if possible. This Guan Yu, this Aphrodite joining the bans alongside that Yamoja, and now maybe the flavor pick that comes through for SSG. What they ban can dictate the pace of this one, as well as whether or not Radiance are able to get that Q. But it's going to be the Raw again, and again, it kind of feels weird to focus on the Raw over everything. I guess shutting down big man things, it worked out pretty well last game.
Yeah, like I said, Ra just has too much objective prowess. He just does too much around objectives, and healing is just so hard to deal with it. So I understand wanting to just ban that and keep that away. They also haven't had a problem with anything on the second side of the pick bans, so you might as well just keep banning the Ra and just play it out how it was in the previous picks and ban.
Well, this one's an interesting dynamic. I mean, we talked about Serket, we talked about Cupid. Nike was mentioned as a really big factor for SSG last game, but it didn't come up in the first pick conversation. Cupid's going to get first picked here by SSG, but Nike taken over everything else here by Radiance. Do you think that she's big enough in terms of impact that she deserves that spot?
Double Nike was definitely a problem. I don't know if singular Nike will be as big of a problem. Maybe they're just taken away so they can't get the double Nike. And I guess just from looking back from their perspective, they must have seen Nike as the problem and not Cupid. So I understand them picking away the Nike and first picking that instead.
Well, Cupid Kuzenbo is going to be coming through here for SSG. Pretty solid duo lane, I think, for any team, but especially for SSG. This Cupid, I mean, we had talked about it maybe being a potential counter overall to well, at least some of those dive junglers for someone like Adapting who was going in. It also forces a bad matchup because Cyclone Spin has been favoring this Heimdall that gets locked in as well. Do you like having it here? Like, does this hurt Adapting Cyclone, maybe honestly even a little bit more? A Roar maybe included in that as well, just because they have it locked in so early?
I think it kind of just changes what they're going to pick. Like, they don't even pick the Serket in the first half now because they're just probably so worried about that Cupid. Cupid just makes it so you can't play certain dive gods, and Serket is obviously one of them, and it hinders other gods even, because if you use your CC immunity, your CC immune ult or whatever it is, you are instantly in a spot where you're just going to get ulted by Cupid, locked down, and killed.
Well, Morrigan locked in once again, although this time it won't be the double Nike as you had highlighted, and that's taken away from Radiance, although they locked in Discordia when they had the opportunity for the Morrigan, so I don't know that they cared too much about that. Either way, some interesting matchups can still become Nike, just won't have the presence of 2 of them, and now's where the bans get to change. Daji taken away here from Radiance, a lot of CC immunity kind of lacking on the side of SSG. Not too surprising to see that one come through. But do you go for the Serket here, knowing that Adapting has a bad matchup, or do you let that one through and maybe focus your next ban for SSG on someone else?
I don't know. I think he's just put so many games on the Circuit, it might be a safe thing to ban it away, but
True.
it's just such a hard matchup that I honestly, I think I would leave it open and make him play it. You showed how bad he played on it last game into that hard of a matchup, so you might as well just keep it. Make him play it again. Make him show you that he can play the Circuit into Cupid.
Yeah, and they're going to follow your advice exactly. They ban out the Ares instead to try and control Aurora because of how dominant he has been on that pick. It's going to be the Raven and the Tsukuyomi on the other side. Radiance trying to take some shots over there at Cherio. Had a pretty stellar game last time around. Granted, I think we all saw the slash line. We know that Dardez was a huge driving factor and the main factor, I think, for their win. But Cherio having a much better game than what we have seen so far this set. And just trying to pull out all of those from underneath him. This would be a good one. I had actually looked this up before the set. There were a couple of gods I was trying to figure out what SSG had a 100% win rate on. One of them was Thor. The other one was Nemesis. They in Phase 2, actually, I think all year is what I was looking at. They've won every game they've played with Nemesis. And so, that being said, they've also kind of come into this with I want to say maybe an awkward thing. Does Nemesis fit well into this draft, and does it have a good matchup here?
I think Nem is mostly just she just goes into most comps well. She really doesn't have great matchups or comps that she likes playing into. She just does everything well. She's just going to dive a carry and just try to one-shot a carry. And she's going to be able to dive the disco pretty easily. If she goes like an Erendite or something, she can just sit on her, pop her shield, and she's unkillable.
Well, I love having you here, but this is one of those instances Snoopy, just because he plays with the only Bastet player that we have in the league, might be able to give some insight. Bastet locked in the Cabrakan run back as well here for Aurora. I mean, these last two picks, especially after that Cabrakan performance, how do you feel about the Bastet joining the ranks for Radiance, and how do you like these last two for them?
I feel like Bastet is a pretty underrated character, but it's a weird matchup into Cupid. Cupid will just lock her down the same way that he did with Cirquette. Bastet's forced to go into beads. If Bastet ever gets her beads forced, she can't play aggressive. Yeah, he's basically just stuck in the same spot, except he doesn't have to go blink. He can go beads. So it is a better pick than it is in the Cirquette, and then Cabrakan just does pretty well into Cupid for the lockdown.
Yeah, you had mentioned that last time around. The Cabrakan has a pretty solid matchup there, so just hoping for a better game overall from Aurora. But the Bastet kind of throwing me for a loop, adapting, bringing that one in. I don't know, I'm looking at Morrigan, Kuzenbo, Nemesis, King Arthur, Cupid. If you're going just off of a tier list, that team wins. SSG, in my eyes, are maybe pushing us to a Game 5. How are you feeling about it, Bobby?
Yeah, I really like SSG. I feel like they've figured out the picks and bans, and they are now in the driver's seat with these picks and bans. And I don't know if they would have had a better pick anywhere. I think this is exactly kind of comp that they would want to play with.
Yeah, I mean, it's just frightening. I keep looking over there, and it's almost like looking into a nightmare. I'm pretty sure there have been pro players that have dreamt, or I guess had nightmares, about this exact thing happening for SSG. But, I mean, there's a lot of question marks over here. The Nike, the Heimdall, the Discordia, we've seen them all this set. Cabrakan hasn't had a good track record, and the Bastet is fresh. Those two are maybe the proving grounds for Radiance. Aurora adapting. They've been the conversation of Phase 2. They've been the conversation, I think, of even the last couple of days. And they might just be the conversation here in Game 4. Make or break. Will Radiance win this one and send SSG home, or are SSG alive? Let's find out.
Thanks again there on the desk, Gormizer and Inbound. Still Finch and Miff here, still Doug making everything happen here for us. We move into this all-important game for Radiance. Looked dominant in Games 1 and 2, but SSG found the rhythm in Game 3, brought us to this Game 4 in Myth. You were telling me, I don't know, that you weren't super happy with Radiance. Is it the Bastet, the Cabrakan, which has struggled so far? What do you not like here?
It just feels like that this draft, again, is going to be entirely contingent on gaining a lead in the early game. This pick playstyle is reprised yet again with some different pieces by Radiance. If Adapting falls behind, he instantly becomes a non-factor on this Bastet. If Aurora falls behind on this Cabrakan, who has seen zero success so far in the set, be it on Spacestation or Radiance, he becomes a non-factor. But if Radiance does pull a lead, they've got the tools to systematically destroy Spacestation's draft. This Bastet pick that the desk brought up, I think in my mind, easily is only for one cost, or only one reason Adapting decides to pick this one up, and it's to deal with Dardes in the back. Dardes on this Morgan was left completely alone through all of Game 3. Now, in Game 4, he's going to contend with Adapting's ultimate, jumping in, clawing. That should be enough damage to kill the Morgan on its own. But there's so much peel potential from SSG, and if Bastet doesn't kill the Morgan, she's essentially dead. Nemesis ult to slow her down, Nika for the lockdown, even Rapper or Cupid to lock him down as well. Adapting's going to be walking a very thin line.
It's going to be difficult for him this time. As Inbound predicted, Adapting did go B's first Relic this time, so he'll have the option to be a tiny bit safer. But for me, one of the bigger problems, I mean, obviously Adapting couldn't do what he wanted, is Cheerio looked at the solo lane gank, and Benji wasn't ready for it. Dash in, Benji falls, and SSG on the board already. Myth, this is not a great start here for Radiance.
All right, King Arthur with a lead in lane from the 1 minute mark. Already one of the most oppressive lane bullies that we've got in Smite. Now already with a lead as well. It's going to be hard. Benji going to be left alone for a while. Once he takes over to level 5, this Nike shouldn't have to worry about falling down again. That secondary health bar that comes from the Sentinel Zeus should come into play there. But Nemesis picking up First Blood, that's huge. King Arthur having a lead, that's huge. Now Space Station essentially has done enough inside of that solo lane that you can leave Nika alone on an island and have Cheerio dedicate all of his time to just the mid and duo. A fantastic start.
And all that Nike safety you just mentioned, that's what has me worried about Radiance's chances to keep Dardes in check, right? Because Dardes borrows that safety, that survivability. He did it all last game. Whenever he was in trouble, ult into that Nike, drop the Sentinel Zeus, and suddenly no one can seemingly touch you. It's going to be a tough job for Adapting, either killing Dardes before that can happen, or when the ultimate's down, or trying to find a way to kill Dardes through it. This Nike pickup, wherever it is on the map, has really helped out this Morgan.
I think it's almost Adapting saying that, okay, I want to go back to that previous playstyle, the clean-up king. I want to wait for Dardes' ultimate to go down. I want to wait for the initial engagement to end, and then I'm going to pop my ult, jump in, and be the hero that we need. And if you look at Radiance's draft, it kind of lends itself to that style. Benji can go in, initiate a fight, pop that secondary health bar, and stay in it for as long as you need, forcing Space Station to use their utility. Aurora can go in as well, especially if he decides to pick up the Stone of Gaia that we saw in Game 3. If he does that again, he can stick around these team fights a lot longer. BMT on this Discordia can engage from a much further range as well, and Cyclone's just back there playing safe on Heimdall. That all adds up to a situation where Adapting doesn't have to be that initiator that we saw in Circat, which should make it a lot harder for Dardes to perform.
Dardes and Cheerio looking for a red buff invade. Tings comes around the safe way, and Adapting does not have that ultimate available, that big stem that makes everything Bastet does hurt so much harder. Aurora with the stun, Rapper with the push, and Aurora in a bad spot already. They drop, and the Nemesis ultimate on top of him, and Aurora is a sitting duck with the tremors. The body blocks from Adapting aren't enough, but look how low SSG are. Can anyone get in to clean this up? Adapting gets one. Support for support, and they defend their red buff, but SSG clearly looking for pressure.
Yeah, Space Station knows that they can get ahead right now. They've already got a pretty sizable lead for the state of the game, so I like that red buff invade attempt. But a quick rotation from Radiance, Adapting, picking up that kill as well, is nice to swing it a little bit back in their favor. This Bastet is going to benefit greatly from picking up that kill, able to maintain a little bit of parity with Cheerio inside the jungle. But both of these guys, both junglers, are going to be scaling incredibly well into the late game. Bastet, after the rework, has become this late game hyper carry assassin. Nemesis has always been inside that role. It's about which one of them is going to find more value as the game goes on. And I think Nemesis is a lot easier to execute on.
We just saw it there, right? I mean, Aurora would love to be able to chill in the tremors, to be this sentinel for the team, but Cheerio cuts him down to size with that ultimate and makes Aurora a much easier target. Now that one was made harder by a good positioning by Adapting some body blocks, but he was able to eventually get the trade. But how much longer will that be viable? Will the member they send in first to create a cleanup situation for Adapting just get punished right away? If Adapting had the ult though, Myth, I don't know, maybe he turns that around, right? I mean, there are so many low members there. If he gets a couple more picks, then suddenly Radiance are in a great position. So SSG, got to remember, they're walking a bit of a tightrope with Adapting on this Bastet.
It feels like Radiance is in a situation where they're kind of comfortable waiting for the late game, even though SSG has one of the nastiest late game drafts that I think I've ever seen, because they're banking on that counter matchup from adapting into the Morgan, or from adapting even into Vote, that burst potential. I'll be interested to see how he decides to build out this Bastet.
They go for Benji again. Sentinel Zeus gets drained quickly, and Cheerio finds his 3rd kill of the game. Mifflin, you said maybe Cheerios need to come back over there. Benji's ahead, but if it's gonna work, I don't see any reason why Cheerios should slow down.
Hey man, you don't have to double dip in the salsa, but Cheerio definitely wants some more salsa, right? Like, might as well head over there and pick up another kill. It works for him. And it doesn't seem like they really want to play around that duo lane. It makes sense that he's not really allocating his time over there, because Heimdall is one of the safest hunters in the game, right alongside Jingwei and Hachiman, the Bifrost, the CC immunity, the ultimate, all making it that much harder to lock him down. Whereas Benji has been playing largely aggressive despite a deficit in the short lane, because he feels safe having that secondary health bar. Can't feel safe if you're 30% less damage mitigation because you just got slammed by a Nemesis ultimate. I think SSG is doing a fantastic job using this pace, using their Nemesis in the early game to create pressure.
It's been really well timed here from Cheerio, where he's elected to put his pressure on the map. And Radiant struggling a little bit to respond. They look so dominant in the first 2 games there, Miff, that, I mean, Inbound was saying that SSG needed to make some mistakes, and now SSG the ones being active. Adapting, gets off the buffs in time, narrowly survives there, but you can see the way SSG are looking to pincer Radiance to look for pressure, and now it's about invading this blue. On his way in is Tings to try and help, but the same can be said for Cheerio, who's making a rotation. There's the tectonic shift, though. Raffer has been locked down, but he lives with the watery grave. Not long enough. The apple was there on him, and Radiant finds a pick. Sentinel Zeus is there for the lockdown. Aurora makes it back towards safety, and it looks like Radiant's got the punishment they were looking for.
They did, but they're still sticking around. SSG aren't willing to give up this fight just yet. Health bar is favoring the red team, numbers favoring the blue.
Aurora looks to the re-engage. The rest of his team makes it back towards safety. Aurora lives as well. They lost their blue buff, but I think Radiant have sent a bit of a message. They've got the damage to defend here from this point, and SSG gotta make sure they're being careful.
Yeah, SSG needs to stay grouped up if they want to take these fights so early on. Raptor gets isolated by Aurora's ultimate, immediately followed up by the golden apple from Big Man Tings, and the rest is history. They need to play around their core members. Raptor does get the watery grave off and finds a good deal of CC considering how low he was, but nobody was around to benefit from it, allowing Adapting to continually jump in, find a claw, jump out, do that exact same thing, rinse and repeat. I think it happened about 4 times throughout the entire duration of that engagement. Someone from SSG needs to deal with Adapting. That's a small microcosm of how Adapting is going to be looking to play for the rest of the match, and we got to see exactly how it works out. Dardes makes it out by the skin of his teeth through that claw damage. It's not going to work the exact same way once Adapting has Jotun's Wrath, Brawler's Beatstick, even potentially Heartseeker, Erendite, all of these things that are just going to expand his damage.
A lot of pressure, I think, going to be put onto the guys that Gore highlighted on the desk. Adapting, as you just broke down, but also Aurora. They're going to need this Kabrakan to show up for them in these team fights. We haven't seen it yet from any team so far here today, but perhaps Aurora can pick up that slack, especially in a world where Benji has been getting bullied over there in the solo lane, right? Their front line could potentially be in some trouble, so they're going to need this Kabrakan to show up. And I mean, when this Kabrakan is working optimally, what is the idea from it anyway? Is it initiating for the team, or is it disrupting during the fight? What is the best case scenario for?
It's the ability to separate the team fight through the wall, and then he almost plays this pseudo Horus roll as Cyclone Spin goes in.
He wanted to turn that around with the ultimate, but Vote was just ready for it. He dodges it nicely. And Miff, sorry I didn't get to hear from you there, but you'll have to tell me after this blue buff fight as SSG are back again. There's the disruption coming out from Rapper. Adapting is inside the ultimate, but hasn't had a chance to do much. There's the leap in, the damage is good, and suddenly he's got Cheerio low, but he has to retreat, and Dardes is there waiting. A better Bastet gets the kill, though Benji does eventually get the punish. Benji looking for the double kill, and he gets it with the dunk on to Dardes. You can camp him if you want, but you can't slow the man down. He gets 2.
Continuous pressure from SSG around this blue buff is just It's questionable at this point. They haven't been able to win the fight cleanly. They have been able to take it, but it seems like they want to play around the lead that Nika had, but that lead's already been cut. Got to play a lot safer, a lot around these engagements.
Benji defends the blue buff. Now Tings is here. I don't know if they have any kill potential. One of these tanky members here of SSG, but Radiance starting to fight their way back in. And listen, SSG have looked strong this last game and now here in this one, but Radiance still have some fight in them.
They certainly do. Aurora was allowed to free cast inside of that engagement as well. It seems like, especially with his build as it is, he shouldn't be able to find these cages. He was able to cage off Raffer and Sherry as Nika, getting a little bit aggressive, trying to move in towards his blue buff, does pick it up. Benji not quite damaging enough to pick up that kill in return. But look at the leads. Look how the game has shifted. The game state. Benji, who had been camped for the first 6 minutes of this game, fell behind 2 levels at one point, now has a level lead in his lane. Adapting's been able to close up that gap a little bit as well. Even Aurora, who had been suffering throughout the early duration of the match, has caught up to Raffer. Spacestation, that lead has slipped away.
Yeah, things are much more even now, and we kind of saw a little bit of that potential there from adapting in that fight. I think Dardes maybe showed some of it too. And maybe you're happy, right? If Dardes is turning into the Bastet instead of the Nike, maybe you have a bit more potential to deal with him there, but then his damage output.
His damage output is lacking ever so slightly.
Yeah, they have to keep an eye on what it is that Dardes is choosing to transform into in these fights, Mifflin. Otherwise, he could potentially catch them off guard. We saw that Bastet there.
Yeah, I like the decision from Dardes, though, to transform into the Bastet in that engagement in particular, because that was an engagement where Spacestation is choosing to get aggressive. When he turns into the Nike, it's almost always going to be a counter dive measure for adapting. But right there, we see, okay, we're looking to fight. We need to blow them up. It didn't work out last time around the blue buff. Let's expand our own damage output. And it worked out in a small way. He was able to finish off a couple of kills, but he didn't get the full damage potential of the ultimate in the Claws combo.
Well, another fight here around this blue buff, Mifflin, but this time Radiance are ready for it. Adapting leaps in with the ultimate, doesn't quite have the damage, so next up is Benji. Chilio forced big man Tings out of this fight, but Tings looks healthy too. The lowest members of this one are Nika as well as Raffer, but look at this from Dardes. He wants to re-engage, and he's able to do it. Too much damage for big man Tings. They cut him down to size, but everyone is low on the side of SSG. Benji with the up-down gets one, Adapting gets the second, and now Raffer a little bit too low, but Vote has rotated into this fight, and Cyclone Spin is nowhere to be seen. That turns the fight back around, and SSG stay close.
Look, SSG, you can't fault their tenacity to continually show up around these blue buffs for fights. Haven't really been going their way, but that's finally one where it swings in their favor. Cyclone Spin, on the other hand, not rotating to the fight, is able to strip away that red buff in exchange. I think that SSG should likely try and shift their attention elsewhere on the map. These fights aren't really working out. Your Honor, Benji is just built different. A 3-man knockup's going to win you at every time.
I can't believe he didn't get more out of that one, huh? It looked like he sure was able to, or at least get close. But it wasn't quite enough. I guess Vote's rotation on the tail end of that ended up being the difference maker for them and getting a little bit more damage out. But this one's still close, and Radiance showing they can certainly still fight in. It's not out of reach for either team yet, but only SSG playing with their lives on the line and knowing they've got to win this and one more in a potential Game 5.
Look, the game's completely even at this point. As far as I'm concerned, if SSG shows up that blue buff again, it's just stubbornness. They don't have enough to really feel like they can get aggressive in the enemy jungle, especially considering how safe Benji is at this point. You don't want to fight around the Nike, who's got a secondary health bar, 80%, and already a Stonagaya and Mystical as well. I mean, Benji's not dying unless he chooses to for the good of his team. And we've already seen that Radiance is rotating in mass to make sure these defenses go their way.
Looks like SSG are rotating towards gold, though. They've got a lot of people over there on that side of the map, but they haven't started it up just yet. Instead, maybe a bit of a bait as they've got Dardes running around in stealth. 4 members are over here, ready to potentially fight over it, while both solo laners are still battling in solo. Tectonic shift, finds 3, but Vote has the better Fields of Love, and Aurora is stuck in the middle of all of it, but somehow he's still alive. Cyclone Spin gets Raffer. Vote in the back is trying to evade, adapting, and he's got the damage. Vote wins the duel, but Cyclone Spin has a double. Once this Heimdall gets involved, his damage is a little too strong, and he's running down 2. The Gallarhorn gets him a triple kill as Cyclone Spin shows up. Bifrost to close the gap is not enough, but Radiance answer back in a big way.
I owe SSG an apology. I understand completely why they were avoiding that side of the map. Cyclone Spin is a sociopath, tearing through the entirety, and Radiance move in. They confirm the gold free for themselves, pick up the kill. We were worried for a second. I've seen so many steals today, but Cherio, the only thing he loses is his life.
All right, so Cyclone Spin's 4-0-0, and my man got 4 in that team fight. He now is an absolute machine gun, and SSG were right to be wary of him, and this spells a problem now for this Chaos side team, because Aurora lived through so much damage at the start of that fight, Mifflin. He might be too tanky to be a target. Adapting, got a kill and got one low, and Cyclone Spin has the rest of the necessary damage. SSG has got to be careful, because now Radiants are up over 3,000 gold.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, and now who's the real loser in that situation? It's Vote. He's got to go lane against a level 18 crit Heimdall who's 4-0. I mean, we've already seen that Spacestation hasn't really been willing to show up on that side of the map, and I think we got a case study on why in that last engagement. Spacestation's not going back over there. It's just, Vote, please handle Cyclone Spin in a miracle world. Maybe you solo him. But it's such a tough situation. Cyclone now, with this lead, should have complete dominance on the left side.
A really impressive fight there from Cyclone Spin. Was able to get a lot of work done, really from all of Radiance, though, with all the time that Aurora bought, right? With adapting, getting several members low in that fight as well. They're going to need a lot more of that, though. This SSG team is not going to quietly go away, right? I mean, I know they're down some gold, but Dardas has still been playing well. He'll be able to borrow Cyclone Spin's lead with this Changeling ultimate. They still have great control with the Watery Grave and the Fields of Love and the quick burn potential from Cheerio's ult. Radiance are in a good spot, but not a guaranteed one by any means.
Look, if Dardas transforms into Cyclone Spin here, that's adapting food. He's going to press the ultimate, he's going to jump in, he's going to claw. Not even Cyclone Spin wins that 1v1. That's the type of damage output Bastet has at this point of the game. I think, if anything, we noted earlier.
19! What?
Yeah, I think he wins that, man. I think he really does. That's how much damage it is. And with the follow-up as well, I think Dardas' best opportunity, transform into Benji and initiate fights. That's really all it is.
Well, I mean, it's a good point, right? Cyclone Spin has to aim it, right? He has to hit like 4 autos, and Adapting has to jump on him, right? And it's over. Yeah, so it's a good point, right? I mean, the damage from this Bastet comes out quick, even quicker than Cyclone Spin is. Cyclone Spin is in a hunting mood. Now he's over here on the solo side of the map. Meanwhile, Benji is taking care of left. I don't think this is a full lane swap necessarily, but with Pyro going down, maybe with Cyclone Spin already over there, they'll just let him handle that duty. As Cyclone Spin regroups, it looks like he's moving back towards mid now at this point.
This is the most ADC mentality thing ever. Cyclone Spin sits in lane until level 18. A team fight meanders its way onto his side of the map. He picks up a quadra kill. He's level 20, and now he's just like, all right, well, I guess I'm done with duo. I'll be somewhere else. My man spent the entirety of the first 16 minutes on a farming simulator, and it just works, dude. It blows my mind that Hunters have ever complained about their lane in their lives, dude.
What do you mean? Cyclone's about to watch the last game be lost by Aurora in mid lane. He didn't have anything to do with it. This game, he gets involved and he gets to win. It's the hardest rule. You gotta wait until you can win, and then you get to pop off. We love ADCs, all right?
Yeah, hey guys, win the game for me, and then I'll win even harder when I show up. This is exactly what Cyclone said. But it works, so I can't fault them on it. Now Radiance get to play this aggressive style. They're playing around the king, the Cyclone Spin.
Yeah.
He's going to be able to tear apart anyone who steps in front of him. Even this Kuzin bow, without having thorns, can't deal with it.
Well, Aurora's getting aggressive, blink into the tectonic shift, and Vote now taking a bunch of damage from Adapting, but Adapting low as well. Not so low that he can't get the kill, though. Vote dies from the dot as Adapting doesn't look at explosions. The tier 2 tower in left falls as well, and Radiance, I think, recognize now that they're the ones in control, are pushing the issue. They're up nearly 7k gold.
That exactly right there is what I'm talking about. That Bastet burst potential. My man pressed 4, he pressed 1, and then all of a sudden 80% of Vote's health bar is gone, and we haven't even talked about the claws yet. I think he overkilled him by 1,000. Bastet's late game damage potential is absolutely ridiculous, but it's a thin margin. He's got to play this dangerous style. If he jumps in and Cupid drops ult, he's stuck there. If he jumps in and catches a stun from Dardes out of stealth, he's dead. Adapting has to make these hard decision trade-offs, but it's made easier when his team has a lead and they're all grouped up behind him.
Fire Giant down to half. SSG seem to want to look for a defense despite the tremendous deficit. Radiance now looking like maybe they want to reset. They secure it in the end, but boy is Adapting low for it. So is Cyclone spin in the back, but Aegis buys him time. He gets a kill before he falls, but so does Adapting. Radiance may have overcommitted here, and SSG have themselves a window. Big Man Tings is low, and Nika is on the hunt, but cannot quite get there. The front line keeps their back line safe, and now they can look for the trade. Dardes has to run. Nika on the wrong side of this wall, and Radiance lose the FG of the most important members, but at least it wasn't worse.
Hey, 3 members with Fire Giant, 2 of them being tanks means that you can sit inside these towers indefinitely. I think Radiance hasn't even lost their potential to push here, but it was a slight overstay. Benji jumps in with the blink, tries to find Dardes out of stealth, but maybe he oversteps.
Well, now Benji's considering going back in. He's like, hey, Dardes, don't run in here, because I can still kill you. Feel the love being dropped. Benji takes the damage, but there is no stun. There's the Sentinel Azush, as now Benji and Aurora look for the 2v4. Okay, we're out of there. Things are a little hectic on that last one, but as you said, Fire Giant still on 3 members of Radiance. They can still use that sustain.
Does Benji even need the second health bar there? I think he ulted just because it was off cooldown. He was tanking 4 members of SSG for legitimately 8 seconds, and his health bar went down to 70%. We saw now what Sunder is for, Rapper using it against Benji, but even then they couldn't pick up the kill even with the damage mitigation, the defense mitigation rather. I think Benji's at a point now, my man's unkillable as long as he's playing smart, and even when he isn't, because he jumps into 4 members there, it's so hard to kill him.
Yeah, I get why Chilio went in for a second round of dip, huh? Because someone was going to take it away. You're not killing Benji anymore. That was their last chance. It was back in the early game. So now, Radiance trying to start up this Oni Fury. They've got it down to half, and SSG are nearby to look for the defense. This Oni Fury could be big, as Dardes nearly stripped it away, but it goes to Radiance in the end. They'll have those Oni minions moving in on the next spawn, and SSG are going to have to deal with them.
2 minutes left on Fire Giant with 3 members. Radiance, 3 towers standing between them and the exposed birds of Space Station. I imagine we see them group up on the right side, either strip away the Pyromancer initially or group up on the towers first. But we need to see some of these towers fall for them to get any value out of this Fire Giant.
I still do have a couple tier 2s and this tier 1 to grab. About 3,500 gold out there for Radiance to add to their pockets, and they're already weighed down by a hefty 8k gold lead, but it hasn't seemed to affect their stride so far. So let's see how it looks here. They have the Oni minion wave in left that will be unaffected. Vote's dealing with the one in mid, and they're pushing with the wave in right. Benji moves in first, and SSG's soft defense becomes no defense. They back up. Radiance take the tier 2, easy as you like, and now they move over towards mid. They should be able to meet a minion wave there pretty easily and look for this push as well.
I like the call from SSG. That soft defense had no right to exist. A fight without Vote is a fight you can't take if you are on the Chaos team, because he's their sole source of true AoE damage. If Feels the Love isn't separating these team fights, it's not the Morgan. It's not like an Agni Bomb or a Poseidon Kraken that just absolutely decimates a group of people. The Morgan's out there to find exactly one target. If he can catch Adapting unaware or Big Man Tings unaware, maybe that's where you see Dardes get the full value. But every single fight has been initiated by Radiance. They can spot Dardes from across the map and keep track on him, keep a bead on him, and make sure that this Morgan hasn't been able to get value. When's the last time we saw Morgan come out of stealth and stun somebody and set up for a kill that way? He hasn't been afforded that opportunity because SSG's been on the back foot for the last 12 minutes.
Radiance in a great position now. Up 9,000 gold. They still have Fire Giant on 3. They're looking to burn down this mid-tier 2. They did Pyro first, then regrouped, bought some items, and are pushing back out with a Spirit Robe, a Rage, a Sap of Mirrodin, all at their disposal. And SSG cannot contest, so the mid-tier 2 goes down. That is it for the Fire Giant buff, though, so Radiance are disengaging, but they're setting a trap. If anyone in SSG were to come out, they'd fall, but Good eye there, Doug. Wards are down, a minion was there, the Kappa at the very least, and that trap's not going to trick any.
Look, 11,000 gold, or 10,000 rather, 30 seconds left on Fire Giant. Radiance needs to back up, get some ward coverage, control the Fire Giant pit, and then dare Spacestation to make a hard decision. Do we walk in and defend? If we defend and lose the fight, we lose the game. If we don't defend, we have to worry about the siege from Radiance on these Phoenixes that are now fully exposed. I think that, if anything, SSG should put up a soft defense here, not committing their lives. If anyone dies on SSG trying to defend this Fire Giant, I think that's such a huge hindrance to their ability to stop the push from Radiance. And even then, Space Station have this unorthodox mage inside of the Morgan, which means that their defense around these birds is initially going to be weaker no matter what. It's a hard decision from SSG. I'll be interested to see how they decide to play it.
Right now, they're in between, Meth. They've got everybody here, but not much further up than where their tier 2 tower used to be. Benji is on zone duty. No one's doing fire.
Wow.
They're looking for the fight. They lock down Rapper with that tectonic shift. Meanwhile, Cyclone Spin is dueling Dardes, but Nika might have taken him up and out of the damage. Now Cyclone Spin can get out using the Bifrost. I don't know if they're on the same page, but Cheerio is on the page that has Adapting Dead. A nice book for him, but Benji hunts down Vote in the backline. That means it's 1-for-1 jungle for ADC. Nika used the beads to get away from Aurora, and now Cheerio making his way in, but he's shook by the tremors. Tings trying to avoid the damage, but there's too much. Cheerio doing it all as he saves this team fight for SSG.
Cheerio legitimately does it all now. We see Nika jumping back in. Benji in the back, tries to find him. Rapper is able to separate the team fight as Dardes is left alone.
Cyclone Spin wants to get in, though. He knows he has the damage to save this fight if he can find a viable target. And so far, it's Rapper who Cyclone Spin gets the kill on. Now he can try and re-engage topside, and anyone he meets is hurting. He gets to Cheerio first with the ultimate. Aurora takes care of Dardes, and Cyclone Spin pops Cheerio the second that he lands. Cheerio did all he could, but no way you're stopping the runaway train of Cyclone Spin.
Cyclone remind him, hey, don't forget about me. I got a quadra earlier. I'll do it again. King Arthur gonna fall easily. Cyclone Spin survives the initial engagement and then pops off later. But I like the strategy from SSG. They realize immediately once Rapper is caught out, they have to engage themselves. They have to split up the fight for Radiance. That's why we see Cheerio go deep into the back line. That's why Dardes is back there with him as well. Unfortunately, this lead is so stifling despite in this one isolated engagement within Game 4. Space Station may have played slightly better. It wasn't well enough to cover a 13,000 gold deficit.
Adapting, getting the ultimate out from Vote. Meanwhile, Fire Giant on all 5 members here this time, and Vote no longer has the ultimate. He does not have Aegis, he just has the beads. Tings looking to hunt him down in the jungle now. And I know if this was a support, I think they might give up on this eventually, but this is Vote. They're gonna hunt him to the end of the earth. They land the strife, Vote ends up falling, and Radiance now up 14,000 gold. They'll add Primal Fury to that, and SSG's hopes are slipping further and further away.
Fire Giant on 5, Vote dead for 40, no time to back. Radiance want to push now while they have an advantage. The minion wave is pretty far up inside of that duo lane, so it might take them a couple seconds, but they should still be able to get inside the Phoenix before Vote respawns. The defense potential from SSG has lost a major piece here. All that AoE damage that Fields of Love offers you is lost. Now it's going to be completely relied on Cheerio doing it all again. Those hero style plays, you need them in the back line, one-shotting BMT, one-shotting Adapting. Barring that, I think we need to see more from Dardes. This Morrigan has not impressed.
Everyone who died last fight fell at Cheerio's hand, but they are melting the mid-Phoenix this time. Aurora has the lockdown on Cheerio, puts him down low, and the mid-Phoenix belongs to Radiance. But they're not going to bite off more than they can chew. They're looking for the disengage. They've got more than 1,500 gold in everybody's hands at least, so they want to spend it. We got the player damage charts here. Look at how much Benji is doing. He's doing all of the work right now with Big Man Tings the next one up. But they don't need to do huge numbers or anything like that. They're blowing up the priority targets myth quickly and then moving on.
Benji has been an absolute menace in the back line of SSG. If you were to interview Vote after this match, he'd say this is the most annoying thing ever. Every single time Vote steps up, he drops Fields of Love deep, which means he can't use it for self-peel. The Morgan isn't that much self-peel against this Nike either, so he essentially is left alone with Benji in the backline. Thorns gets popped, damage output from Arendite as well, Sona Gaia healing. Vote can't contend with that damage output, and there's not enough peel on SSG's draft to get him out of these situations. And that's not to talk about the other front lines for Radiance, the pseudo front line inside of adapting. If he jumps in, 80% HP bar on any single one of the carries of SSG. Cyclone Spin in the back line is making it hard for Nika to replicate what Benji is doing as well. It's just a hard situation. It's not often we get to see Smite games nearly 20,000 gold apart, but this is what it looks like. You have to play perfectly and simultaneously pray for mistakes from your opponents, and Radiance aren't making any.
Even perfect play might not be enough from this point, but we'll see. As SSG had to make their final stand, it's a 4-1 split. Benji's in mid, dealing with Nika. Meanwhile, the rest of Radiance are threatening left. Cheerio's lurking off to the side, waiting for his moment as Rapper plays Disruptor. That does move everyone out, but the Apple makes it all the way to the back of the fight to Cheerio. Rapper gets locked in the tectonic shift, and Tings cleans up the kill. Dardes moves in, having transformed into the Nike, but he's a little bit too low, stuck in the Tremors, and Adapting finds that kill. Only 3 members left to keep SSG inside this playoffs to give them a chance for the first seed, and both Cheerio and Nika, that's got to do it all, but Radiance are bearing down, not giving them a moment to breathe. Cheerio goes in the back, blows up Cyclone Spin, and takes out the ADC damage. The Titan is down to half. Tings is still there, putting damage in. The leap comes through from Benji, and Radiance have the Titan down low, just barely enough, and Radiance move on to your finals.
Fantastic plays and an upset in the second day of playoffs. I don't think anyone expected SSG to fall before finals. I thought they were an absolute shoo-in coming into this weekend, but Radiance show up with some of the hottest hands I've ever seen. They were struggling in the tail end of Phase 2. It seemed like they were able to right the ship ever so slightly in the last couple of weeks, but this is beyond righting the ship. This is the best we've seen Radiance look all year, and just in time as we're gearing up for Worlds.
Wow, what a match for tomorrow. How am I meant to sleep, right? I'm going to be thinking about this Ghost Radiance final all night long because it's going to be sick. Radiance turned on the Jets to borrow something Mifflin borrowed from another, right? I mean, this is the kind of matchup that you hope for, and it's all leading up to Worlds for that first overall seed to make it through with the bye and to make your path that much easier. Myth, thanks for being here with me on one heck of a ride. A quick break. We'll be right back here with the Desk to break it down.
Well, they're on to the finals. Radiance do exactly what they need to, and I'm having a little bit of deja vu. Ghost versus Radiance in the playoffs. I mean, that's the same story we had there in Phase 1, making sure they come back for it. But this time, a lot more on the line. First seed at Worlds. That will all be determined tomorrow, and we can look at that when it comes up. As of right now, we got to look at this last game inbound, and I mean, there's a lot, like SSG, very similar to Game 1, have a lot of moments where they're fighting back, they're staving off Radiance, but it never feels like they were able to truly wrestle control away from them.
It just felt like it was just barely out of reach the entire game, and it was just past the early game, SSG just never really could regain control or even get control. Cyclone just kind of popped, Benji kind of popped. It was just like overall, Radiance just played another good set or another good game.
Cyclone just kind of popped. Might even be an understatement. It's so weird to see how, I mean, he was 0-0-0, then one fight happens, and all of a sudden he's 4-0 afterwards, being able to leave. I think it was only Nika alive afterward. Everybody else falls down in that fight. And, you know, there was a lot of question marks. I had said that feels like they're going to ride or die based on the Cabrakan and the Bastet. A lot of that kind of came true, kind of didn't come true. Cyclone had an insanely good game, but Adapting's damage numbers were really high up there when it came through, at least compared to what he's been putting out on the Circuit, as opposed to just being this typical setup, grab someone and throw you back. And it felt like he really did leave them low so that Tings or Cyclone Spin or even Benji could come in and clean up what was left.
Yeah, I really liked the Bastet pick into the Cupid. It ended up doing a lot better than I kind of anticipated. I thought he was going to have a lot more problem diving the backline and even getting damage off. But he was getting a lot of damage off, even if he wasn't confirming the kills. It was just Benji just there to clean it up and get the last hit or whatever he needed to do.
Well, things continued to go well for them. 8-2-4 as Cyclone's been 6-3-10 up there for Benji. And even though Cherio has, I think, a better performance there, the duo lane maybe not holding up to quite what they wanted. Plus, this Morrigan, you know, last game being able to transform into the Nike, having two of them worked out pretty well, but Heimdall dealt with her no problem as the late game approached. And it's kind of hard to look over and glance over at just the damage numbers that come out on the side of Radiance here. Everything they had was going for them. Even the words placed. You know what? That's a column we don't show a lot of love to, but Adapting out there, making sure his team has all the vision necessary to come through. It just felt like the stars kind of aligned for them that time. They doubled down on the Cabrakan, and they were rewarded for it.
Yeah, actually, just talking about that Morgan pick, I feel like the Bastet was a lot better into it because you can just tour and then the Morgan's kind of forced to transform. And then Bastet just kind of sits back and waits for her to transform back into Morgan, and then she just pounces in again. The Circuit just had to kind of all in, and then she would struggle to get out. But yeah, the Cabrakan was just... I liked the Cabrakan, even though it had like its downsides. That's kind of what you get with Cabrakan. Either he'll do a lot and he'll be really tanky, he'll get a lot of damage out, the wall will be important, or he'll just kind of be fodder for the enemy team and he'll just not be tanky, he'll just be dying. No CC immunity. That's just kind of what you get from the character, and I like that Aurora kept with it.
And those walls were very important. A lot of those ults landed perfectly for Aurora in that game and made sure to lock things down. But Radiance win this one 3-1 over SSG. Kind of surprising everyone. I mean, we were saying this game could go either way, but I think even then everyone kind of had this subtle bias in the back of their mind that was, okay, well, yeah, we say anyway, but it's going to be SSG, right? Like, they got to make it to finals. I think everyone had them going up against Ghost Gaming in their brackets. Radiance surprising everyone 3-0 yesterday. 3-1 today. I guess it only makes sense if they're going to continue this route for a 3-2 tomorrow. Give us a nice 5-game set like they did the last time they met Ghost in the playoffs. But Inbound, how are you looking towards tomorrow? How do you expect that matchup between Radiance and Ghost to go?
I think Ghost will be kind of a surprise for Radiance because everyone that they played against have kind of been later game team comps or like teams, and Ghost is just going to try to like run it down early and just try to like destroy them early. I think Radiance can withstand it, and I expect Radiance will come in ready and play really well again tomorrow.
I'm sure everyone's excited to see that one. Inbound, I have to say thank you so much for joining me here on this set today. It's been a pleasure talking with you. And for everyone out there, outside of just watching you when Obey plays, and we'll get to see y'all again later this year when Obey is back into it, where can they just find you to find the content that you're creating, or your Twitter, all that stuff?
Okay, so I stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/inbound. On Twitter, twitter.com/inbound. And then YouTube at youtube.com/inbound. And I do all of it.
And if you're wondering how to spell the Inbound there, well, it's right down there in his name. So make sure you get it right. Go watch it for some premier support content. But that's going to do it for today. Radiance versus Ghost tomorrow. You don't want to miss it. As until then, let's just go ahead and peach it.